Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Night Fear. I know many of you listen to these stories to help you fall asleep. So, before you get settled in, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac in Pine Lake, the kind of suburban town where everyone waves when you pass by, and nothing ever really happens. That weekend, it was the 4th of July, a perfect excuse to throw a small get-together. My parents were out of town visiting family in Vermont, so I figured it was a good time to invite a few friends over. I told everyone to bring swimsuits since we had a decent backyard pool. I even had some leftover fireworks from last year, nothing fancy, just sparklers and a couple of firecrackers. I made it clear in the group chat, backyard only, no one goes inside. I didn't want people spilling drinks on the carpet or rummaging through the fridge. About 25 people showed up. Some lounged by the pool, others jumped in, and there were some intense rounds of flip cup and beer pong happening. Around midnight, we lit the last batch of fireworks out front. By 1:30 a.m., the place was dead quiet. Everyone was gone. The yard was a battlefield of red Solo cups and crushed soda cans, but I figured I'd deal with the cleanup tomorrow. I was drained. I went inside, changed out of my wet clothes, brushed my teeth, and crawled into bed. I was buzzing just enough to feel sleepy but not disoriented. That's when I heard it, firecrackers. Again. But not the distant kind. They were right outside my window. At first, I thought maybe someone forgot a leftover sparkler or was just pulling a prank. I got up and looked out. A line of firecrackers was going off near the pool right where the party had been. My first instinct was to yell out. Maybe someone had stayed behind and was messing around. I rushed downstairs and slid open the glass patio door, keeping the screen door shut. The night was still and oddly cold for July. I called out, "Hello? Who's out there?" No answer. The firecrackers had already fizzled out, but someone had clearly lit them. That doesn't just happen on its own. I pulled out my phone and texted a few friends who had stayed late. Then I messaged the whole group chat, "Anyone still at my house?" Only a couple responded, and they all said they were already home in bed. Figures. Still uneasy, I stepped outside for a minute and scanned the backyard. Nothing. Just darkness, humidity, and the faint smell of smoke. I went back inside, locked the door, and told myself I was being paranoid. 5 minutes later, I was lying in bed when I heard something from the upstairs den, right down the hall. It was soft at first, like a ping-pong ball bouncing. I froze. Then came the sound again, a beer pong ball rolling off a table and bouncing on the wood floor. My pulse spiked. Could someone still be in the house? Maybe someone crashed on the couch or fell asleep in one of the spare rooms? That seemed possible, but also unlikely. I slid out of bed and quietly walked to my door. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Just silence. Then, I heard it. Footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, getting closer. Then the doorknob jiggled. I had locked it, thankfully. But then there was a heavy bang on the door, like someone hit it with their fist. I shouted, "Get out of here! I'm calling the cops! I'm armed!" A voice answered, a deep male voice. "Jay, you in there?" Before I could even process that, I heard a whisper behind me. "Yeah," another voice said, "inside my room." I turned slowly. A man was standing near my dresser, half in shadow, holding something that looked like a pistol. I screamed louder than I ever have in my life. He lunged at me, clapped a hand over my mouth, and hissed, "Shut up or I'll kill you." I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. He unlocked the door and opened it. Another man in a ski mask stood in the hallway. They exchanged whispers like old accomplices. They forced me to sit on the edge of my bed. One kept the gun trained on me while the other two moved quickly through the house, opening drawers and cabinets. One of them returned, demanding the combination to my parents' safe. "I don't know it," I said, shaking. And it was true, I honestly didn't. There were 3 of them in total, all wearing masks. The one guarding me never said much. Just stared. Cold eyes. Unmoving. After what felt like an eternity, maybe 10 minutes, one of the men barked, "Let's go." They disappeared down the stairs. I waited, barely breathing, until I heard the back door slam shut. I ran to the upstairs window, hoping to catch a glimpse of their getaway car. Nothing. They hadn't parked on our street. I called 911. The officers arrived quickly and asked all the standard questions. Did we have security cameras? No. Did I know their names? Only that one of them was called Jay, based on what I'd heard. The cops canvassed the neighborhood and asked the neighbors to check their doorbell footage. No luck. Nothing showed up. Not even the firecrackers. Later, after everything calmed down, the detective suggested that maybe the intruders had scoped the party earlier. They might have seen how many people came in and out. Maybe they waited until things wound down, then used the firecrackers as a diversion to draw me outside and make sure the house was empty. Except it wasn't. My parents were furious. They blamed the party, of course. But mostly, they were just relieved I wasn't hurt. And honestly, so was I. I was lucky. Now, I have motion sensors, floodlights, and a full set of security cams. I learned the hard way that just because you live in a quiet town doesn't mean you're safe. And if you hear fireworks long after the party's over, maybe don't look out the window. Have you ever felt like something wasn't quite right just before everything went wrong? Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. It was the 4th of July, 2015. Our small town of Pine Lake was buzzing for the annual fireworks show at Silver Pines Park. It's kind of a big deal here: barbecue smoke, kids in blow necklaces, couples staking out lawn space hours early. But it always gets way too packed. No parking, people everywhere, loud families and kids screaming. Not really my vibe. A few years earlier, a buddy of mine showed me a secret spot just past the park, a dry ravine, tucked behind a dead-end road near the woods. Technically, it was part of an old drainage basin, but it offered a perfect view of the fireworks without the chaos. You'd never even know it existed unless someone told you. That summer, I had been seeing this girl named Emily. We'd met in one of our community college classes that spring. She was easy to talk to, smart, funny. We'd gone out a few times already. When I asked if she wanted to watch the fireworks with me, she jumped at the idea. She even said she loved the 4th of July. She came over to my place around 7:30, and since the park was only a 10-minute walk away, we decided to walk instead of dealing with the traffic. Plus, we were sneaking in a little tequila and soda. I packed 2 travel mugs, a soft blanket, and a flashlight in my backpack. She brought snacks. I told her I had a quiet, private spot picked out just for us, somewhere nobody else would think to go. As we approached the main park entrance, cars were already jammed along both sides of the road. People were parking in front of fire hydrants and blocking driveways. We slipped away down the side street that dead-ended near the woods. Just past the last house, there was an old chain-link gate leading into the ravine. It wasn't even locked. Never was. We ducked inside, and I gently shut the gate behind us. The slope down into the basin was steep but manageable. Emily grabbed my arm for balance as we walked down through the tall grass and tree roots. The clearing at the bottom was surrounded by pines and brush, and from there, we had a clear view of the sky above the park. It was just after 8 p.m., a few minutes before the fireworks were supposed to start. I laid out the blanket on a patch of level ground and pulled out our drinks. It was darker than I'd expected. The thick tree cover blocked most of the remaining daylight, and the fireworks hadn't started yet. So, we placed our phones face up with the flashlights on, like makeshift lanterns. We laughed as we mixed our drinks. The tequila hit fast on an empty stomach, and for a few minutes, it felt like we had the whole world to ourselves. You could barely hear the crowd noise from the park, just the occasional distant car horn or someone yelling way off in the distance. Then we heard it. A soft rustling sound behind us, like someone or something stepping on dry brush. We both froze. Emily looked at me. I turned and aimed my flashlight into the woods behind us, but the beam didn't reach very far. The light flickered off some tree trunks and branches, but there was nothing clearly visible. She asked, "Do people ever come down here?" I shook my head and told her it was rare. Maybe a raccoon, or even a deer. But I didn't really believe that. The first firework launched with a sharp pop and exploded above us in a burst of red and gold. Emily jumped and then laughed. The sky lit up, and for a few seconds, everything around us glowed. You could see the tops of the trees, the texture of the grass, even the shimmer of her necklace. Then darkness again. The show continued one after another, loud booms echoing off the trees. We sipped our drinks and watched in silence, but I kept glancing over my shoulder. I didn't want to ruin the night, so I didn't say anything at first. But then I heard it again, another crunch, closer this time. I turned around and stared into the shadows between the trees. When the next round of fireworks exploded, several at once, I saw it. A black shape. Standing halfway behind a tree, up on the slope. Still. Watching. My heart dropped. I whispered, "There's someone up there." Emily turned quickly, but the lights went out again. The show paused for a few seconds, and the darkness returned. She asked where I saw them, but I couldn't see the figure anymore. It had vanished. She looked at me, worried. "I want to leave," she said. I didn't argue. We gathered everything quickly, and just as I zipped up the backpack, the final fireworks went off, one loud finale lighting up the whole ravine. Then silence. We clicked our flashlights back on and started climbing the slope. My heart was racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching us. When we were almost at the top, I paused. I turned and aimed my flashlight back toward the trees, and that's when I saw it again. A person. Standing barely 10 feet away. They were cloaked in black, maybe a hoodie or even a robe, with the hood pulled up. I couldn't see their face. They were just there. Still. Watching. And then they moved. Not walked, ran. Right toward us. "Go!" I yelled, shoving Emily forward. We bolted up the slope and out the gate, not even bothering to close it behind us. We sprinted down the street, back toward the crowd and the noise. I didn't stop running until we reached the first group of people walking back to their cars. We weren't followed. To this day, I have no idea who that was. Just one person, I think. Maybe. Could have been more. But I never went near that ravine again, not on the 4th of July, not ever. I still wonder, were they there the whole time? Watching us from the start? And what would have happened if I hadn't turned around? Let me tell you about something that happened one summer night, something that still haunts me when I think too hard about it. It was the 4th of July. After the fireworks died down, a few of us weren't ready for the night to end. My buddy Zach had this idea to check out an abandoned property on the edge of Silver Pines, a developing neighborhood just outside town. It was one of those cookie-cutter suburbs that never fully got finished, rows of identical houses, some completed, some not. This one in particular was nothing but a skeleton, wooden frames, dusty floorboards, and a cinder-block basement. No windows. No doors. No real walls. Just bones. Zach drove 4 of us over there. 2 people bailed right after we arrived. That left Zach, me, and our other friend, Adam. I guess the empty darkness of that place was already enough to rattle the faint of heart. The place had 3 levels, 2 floors above ground and a basement. The stairs were intact enough to climb. We moved through the house like shadows, our only light coming from the moon. Zach told us to keep our phone flashlights off. People were living in the nearby houses and he didn't want any of them calling the cops if they spotted us poking around. It felt like we were walking through a forgotten skeleton. The wind whistled through open beams. Floorboards creaked under our feet. And then we started hearing things. Every time we went upstairs, we'd hear noises below. When we rushed down, something would bang or shift upstairs again. Over and over, like a game of paranormal ping-pong. We figured it was probably just the wind, or maybe some animal scurrying through loose boards and pipes. Then came the moment I won't forget. We were in the basement, moving slow, trying to pinpoint the source of the sounds, when I noticed someone silently walking up the stairs next to me. I could just barely make out the glow from their phone. But I couldn't see a face. I whispered, "Zach." "Adam?" Both of them were standing right in front of me. My heart froze. And then, crash. A stack of pipes leaning against an unfinished wall clattered down the staircase. Not like they just tipped. Like someone pushed them. That's when it hit me. This wasn't the wind. It wasn't an animal. Someone else was here. We bolted. All 3 of us ran out of that hollow shell and stood on the neighborhood street, catching our breath under the streetlights, trying to make sense of what just happened. Zach was convinced the figure I saw was one of the 2 who left earlier. But I told him that didn't make any sense. One of them was a girl who'd made a huge deal about not getting her shoes dirty, and the other was her boyfriend, basically glued to her side the entire time. No way they were sneaking back to mess with us. Zach wasn't totally buying it, but before I could push the point, he realized something: he'd lost his keys. He had no choice but to go back into the house to look for them. So Adam and I waited by the road. It was darker now. Still no flashlights, we didn't want to draw attention. That's when I thought I saw something. A large, dark shape slipping around the far side of the house. I blinked. Maybe it was my eyes playing tricks. A few minutes later, Zach came back, keys in hand. But his face was pale. He said he saw someone again. Still clinging to the idea that it was our earlier friends pulling a prank, he insisted on circling around the house. Adam and I followed him. The night was quiet. Too quiet. When we reached the backyard, I saw Zach suddenly jump and yell, "Run!" And we did. I sprinted out front, thinking Adam and Zach were both behind me. But when I stopped by a large metal dumpster near the curb, I only saw Zach. He was on the other side, peering around it cautiously. Then I heard him say it. "We don't want any trouble." I froze. Then he shouted, "Get to the truck." I didn't ask questions. I ran. He drove. Adam had apparently already made it to his own car. As we sped away, Zach told me what happened. When he was walking by the dumpster, he saw that same huge, dark figure approach. It didn't speak. Didn't move fast. Just slowly reached its arms up, almost like it was trying to block the path. Zach said he watched it step around the dumpster, heading in my direction. That's when he told me to run. Later, Adam told us something else. As he pulled away in his car, he looked in the rearview mirror and saw 3 figures chasing after him. Not running like teens goofing off. running like they meant it. We still don't know what to make of it. Maybe it was some kind of twisted prank. But I've run into my fair share of pranksters, and this felt different. The size of those figures, their behavior, the timing of it all, it didn't sit right. At the time, Zach was around 22, Adam was barely 19, and I was pushing 28. We weren't kids. We weren't the type to spook easy. But whatever was in that house, it felt wrong. Sometimes I wonder, were they just locals messing with trespassers? Or was that house something else entirely? Something that attracted people who didn't want to be seen? People who met under the cover of unfinished walls and moonlight? Zach mentioned something chilling later. It wasn't the first time he'd run into strange figures at that house. He'd gone there alone before. And someone or something chased him that time, too. I wasn't there for that. But after what we saw, I don't think I'd ever go back. Not even in broad daylight. Would you? Here's your adapted and immersive horror story for USA audiences. There was this place in Pine Hollow everyone called the Hollow House. It sat half-finished for years, like the builders just walked away mid-job. The locals whispered about it, especially because the block it sat on felt off, dozens of sagging porches, overgrown lawns, houses that looked empty but somehow weren't. You'd see broken blinds, jumped-up yards, and sometimes, just silence behind drawn curtains. My friends Emily, Sean, Brooke, and I were out late one Friday. We'd grabbed burgers from a 24-hour spot and were just cruising, trying to shake the boredom. That's when Sean brought it up. We should actually go inside Hollow House. Brooke was instantly in. Emily shrugged and said, "Why not?" And me? I wasn't about to be the only one to chicken out. We parked a few houses away. The street had just one sad little streetlight near the end. The rest of the block was dark, like pitch dark. A couple of houses had cars in their driveways, but no lights on. It was the kind of quiet that made your skin crawl. We tiptoed out of the car and kept our voices down as we headed for the Hollow House. Seeing that two-story shell of a house at night, silhouetted under cloudy skies, was something else. It had no curtains, no doorbell, no sign that anyone had touched it in a decade. The front door? Locked, of course. We circled the house, testing windows until one creaked open without a fight. Emily, being the smallest, climbed in. A minute later, she popped open the back door. But here's the thing, it was already unlocked. The second we stepped inside, we got hit with this weird smell, rotting wood mixed with something foul, like mildew and something sharp, maybe ammonia. Honestly? It reminded me of when a stray animal dies in the walls. The first floor was surprisingly intact. Big rooms, clean lines, but no furniture. It was unnervingly still. We kind of split up on instinct. I wandered upstairs while the others stayed below. The second floor looked more abandoned, walls half-framed, insulation poking out like cotton guts. Then I heard someone being loud downstairs. I leaned over the banister and hissed, "Shoo." Upstairs didn't have much, so I headed back down and bumped into Emily. She asked what was up there, and I told her it was unfinished. She still went up to see for herself. I decided to look for the basement instead. Found it behind this old, chipped brown door under the stairs. As soon as I cracked it open, that sharp stench came rushing out. Stronger. Worse. I took a breath and crept down. The steps groaned under my weight. The basement was a disaster, stained concrete floors with rusty brown splotches. My brain wanted to say paint, but my gut said blood. There wasn't much down there. Just a single wooden chair in the corner and a small table. Sitting on it was a dusty Bible. I suddenly heard footsteps behind me. "Yo," I whispered, "come check this out." No answer. I turned. No one was on the stairs. "Hello?" I said louder. That's when I saw her. In the far corner, slouched against the wall, was a woman. Her hair was long and tangled like wet seaweed. Her eyes were wide and fixed on me. No emotion. Just watching. I froze. My body wouldn't move. Then a scream ripped through the house. One of the girls. "Matt!" Sean's voice echoed from upstairs. "Let's go, now!" I bolted up the stairs, legs like jelly. My friends were already racing through the back door. I had no clue what they'd seen, but I wasn't about to ask until we were in the car and moving. We didn't stop running until we slammed the doors shut and sped off. Everyone was talking at once, panic bubbling over. I finally got out. "What did you guys see?" Brooke managed to say at first. There were two men. Standing in the front room. Just standing. Watching us. Sean added, there was something on the floor, too. Could have been bags, or... I don't know. Just dark shapes. But it didn't feel right. No one had seen the men's faces. But they were tall. Still. Silent. I told them about the woman in the basement. The Bible. The chair. The silence. The stare. We didn't know if it was a drug den, a hideout, a cult place, or something far darker. Maybe all of the above. But that night sealed it. We made a silent pact, never talk about Hollow House again. Never go back. I moved out of Pine Hollow a couple of years later. Never looked back. Out of curiosity, I pulled it up on Google Maps once. As of 2019. Still unfinished. Still sitting there. Waiting. It was the kind of neighborhood you see in movies, clean sidewalks, white fences, neatly trimmed hedges. Silver Pines, our small suburban town in Pennsylvania, was known for being safe and peaceful. No one locked their doors. People waved at each other. It was the last place you'd expect something dark to happen. Except, something did. It's been a few summers now, but I still can't push it out of my mind. I've tried. It's like a bad dream that clings to your skin long after you wake up. Back then, my friend Logan and I were always getting into trouble. Nothing awful, just dumb teenage stuff. Sneaking out, tagging places, messing around where we shouldn't be. We both lived at the end of Maplewood Drive and hung out almost every day after school. There wasn't much to do unless you wanted to drive 2 towns over. So we created our own fun. One of our go-to spots was this old, abandoned house on Ridgeview Hill. Locals called it the Holloway Place. It had been empty for decades. Rumors swirled about who used to live there, but no one really knew. It sat right on the edge of an overgrown cemetery, which made it extra creepy. Practically every kid in town had dared to explore it at some point. The inside had been picked clean, no furniture, just graffiti, broken glass, and the scent of mildew clinging to every wall. Logan and I had been there more times than I could count. We'd hang out on the roof, smoke, throw rocks at the trees. It became our fallback spot. Especially on boring nights like this one. It was around 3 a.m. on a random Wednesday. Some girls had ditched us, and we were buzzed from a couple of warm beers we'd stolen from Logan's garage. I talked him out of driving. We decided to walk to the Holloway Place, hoping to blow off some steam. The moonlight was barely strong enough to light the path. We reached the hill, and there it was, just like always. Vines crawling up the walls, bricks stained with time, glass gone from almost every window. The roof's jagged edges looked sharper than I remembered, almost like the place had grown teeth. Logan picked up a rock and hurled it through a 4th-floor window. The smash echoed through the silence. I laughed and did the same, hitting a 2nd-floor pane. At the very top, there was a small, round window, probably an attic. Logan dared me to hit it. I tried. I missed. Again and again. Finally, Logan grinned, grabbed a stone, and said, "Watch this." He launched it. We both watched as it shattered the attic window clean. The sound was sharp, almost too sharp. Then something strange happened. A rock, the rock Logan had just thrown, fell from the sky and landed right at our feet. I recognized it instantly. It had a jagged L carved into one side. Logan had done that months ago. We stared at it, frozen. We laughed nervously, telling ourselves it had to be some other teens messing with us. Maybe they were inside, tossing it back. That had to be it, right? So we did what any overconfident teenagers would do. We tried to catch them in the act. We crept up to the front steps. Vines draped from the porch columns like curtains. The front door, barely clinging to its hinges, hung open just enough for us to slip inside. The stench hit us immediately. Damp, rotten wood and something else, something sour, almost metallic. We stepped inside quietly, climbing the warped staircase we'd climbed so many times before. But that night, it felt different. We made it to the 4th floor. One last staircase led up to the attic. Oddly, we had never gone up there before. It was always kind of tucked away behind some crates and broken boards. Logan led the way. I followed. At the top was a plain wooden door. Logan looked back at me. I nodded. He pushed it open. The smell that hit us was like a punch to the gut, raw, decaying, thick. I gagged and stepped back. Logan went in, covering his nose with his sleeve. I hesitated, but I didn't want to be left alone. I followed. The attic was small. Quiet. Dust floated through the air. A white pentagram was painted across the center of the floor, surrounded by melted candles. The walls were covered in strange symbols. And in the corner, a closed closet door. The smell was strongest there. Neither of us said anything. We just stood there, trying to make sense of it. That's when I turned around. At the bottom of the stairs, barely visible in the dark, stood 2 cloaked figures, staring straight up at me. I froze. Before I could speak, we heard footsteps pounding up the stairs behind us, fast and heavy. We were trapped. I looked at Logan. He was already climbing out the shattered attic window onto the roof. "Come on," he hissed. I didn't think. I followed him. The roof was steep. One wrong step and we were gone. But we didn't stop. Not until we reached the hatch on the opposite side, the one we always used to get up. It was locked. From the inside. That's when we heard it, a booming voice from somewhere down below. They went that way. I've never heard anything like it. Deep. Hollow. Inhuman. I panicked. I stomped on the hatch with all my strength. On the 3rd try, it gave way. The wooden frame splintered, and I fell through, barely catching the ladder before hitting the floor below. Logan followed. We bolted down the stairs, slammed out the back door, and leapt over the crumbling fence into the cemetery. My leg ached. My chest burned. Logan was laughing, but I couldn't even breathe. We crouched behind a gravestone, listening. Then we saw them. 4, maybe 5 cloaked figures, moving through the trees. They had flashlights. They were checking bushes, looking under branches. Searching. We crept deeper into the cemetery. Silent. Careful. When we were sure we were out of sight, we scaled the far fence and ran through a neighbor's backyard until we made it to the main road. We never went back. Sometimes I wonder what we really saw that night. A cult? Some twisted ritual? Why there? Why that house? I still have dreams about that voice. And sometimes, I swear I see someone watching from the edge of the woods behind my house. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way.
It was back in 2017, during my sophomore year at Red River University, when I joined a fraternity and began rushing. As part of a weird tradition toward the end of our pledge period, our entire class was expected to explore a supposedly haunted psychiatric hospital out in the woods near a small Texas town called Silver Hollow. Every pledge class before us had done it. I rode over there with my pledge brother, Josh, and a couple of others. Josh was the one I stuck with most of the night. The hospital was just off a faded state road and backed up against a huge empty recreation park. We all parked in the lot near the abandoned baseball diamond and waited until everyone arrived. Then we started down this narrow gravel path that curved into a thicket of tall pine trees. Once the path cut off sharply to the right, we had to cut through a patch of woods, branches low, ground soft with pine needles, before we reached the old hospital property. I wore the worst possible shoes, my white Nike Blazers. I kept grumbling about them the whole time, but it was too late to turn back. The hospital stood alone behind the trees, surrounded by a cracked parking lot and rusted chain-link fences. Towering and completely dark, it looked like a forgotten relic from another time. It was the kind of place where you could feel the past watching you. It was my first time doing anything like this. A couple of the guys knew how to get in. Apparently, there was an old maintenance window in the back that had been broken for years. One by one, we climbed through it and dropped into a basement level that reeked of mold. The concrete floor was slick with water, making me regret my shoe choice even more. Josh and I hung toward the back of the group. There were about 10 of us in total, and honestly, having that many people there made it feel less terrifying. We made our way upstairs. The building groaned and echoed with every step. Paint peeled off the walls. Dust hung thick in the air. The hall stretched endlessly. Some rooms looked untouched, beds still made, medical charts left behind. Others had been torn apart, metal cabinets pried open, graffiti tags spray-painted onto walls. One guy, Marcus, said hardly anyone ever broke into this place because the main road was watched, but no one thought to come through the park like we had. Eventually, the group split up, some guys wandered left, others right. Josh and I took a quieter hallway that led to a row of patient rooms. One of them still had its hospital bed, old four-stand, and even dusty blinds hanging in place. It felt like we had stepped back in time. That's when it happened. We were just looking around when we heard soft footsteps outside the doorway. Then, we saw something move. A tall black figure, like a shadow, passed quickly from right to left. Both of us froze. I whispered, "Did you see that?" Josh nodded. "Yeah, who is that?" I crept out into the hallway and looked. At the far end, someone stood completely still. I couldn't tell if they were facing me or the wall. No movement. Just a figure. "Hey!" I called out. "Who's there?" They didn't answer, just slipped quietly into the room beside them. Josh stepped beside me, confused. "What did you see?" "I swear someone's here," I said. "Let's go back." We turned around and headed the other way, trying to retrace our steps. As we got closer to the main group, we began to hear voices echoing down the hallway, our pledge brothers laughing or talking, probably unaware of what we'd just seen. Then came the scream. It was loud, sharp, and pierced straight through our bones. A woman's scream. Long, painful, and full of terror, like she was being attacked, like she was being ripped apart. It came from the hallway we'd just left. We froze. The voices of our friends vanished, drowned by that awful scream. For a moment, the whole building felt like it held its breath. "Run!" I shouted. We bolted. Everyone converged at the basement stairwell and scrambled back down. I ended up at the back of the group again. Josh was ahead of me. One by one, we ducked back through the broken window. The screaming stopped. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, stomping footsteps charging down the stairs. Not running. Not our footsteps. Someone or something was coming. "Go!" I shouted, still halfway through the window, expecting at any moment to feel hands wrap around my legs. Josh got out, then I dove out right after him. We hit the cold grass and ran hard, pushing through the trees. Branches slapped our faces, but we didn't care. We weren't stopping. We didn't talk until we got back to the cars. Everyone was out of breath, wide-eyed, staring at one another. "I saw someone," I said. "Back in that hallway. Right where the scream came from." No one had answers. Just silence. We left shortly after that. No more jokes, no more bravado. Everyone had seen or heard something they couldn't explain. That was the last time I ever did anything like that. Urban exploring sounds cool, but after that night, I was done.
When I was 17, I had a job delivering pizzas for a local joint in a quiet Midwest town called Pine Hollow. It was a decent gig for someone my age. I'd been doing it for months, zipping around town in my old beat-up Honda Civic. This happened one weekend night, either Friday or Saturday, I can't remember which exactly. I was working the late shift, the one that ended at midnight. Most of our orders came from within a few miles of the shop, but this one stood out. It was for a single large pepperoni, going out to a woman named Karen. The weird part? The house was about 15 minutes out, almost to the edge of town. That was unusual. Still, I figured the distance might mean a better tip. I tossed the pizza into my passenger seat and started driving, listening to my usual playlist. The streets were nearly empty, just flickering traffic lights and the occasional car passing by. I eventually pulled into a quiet cul-de-sac where the houses all looked a bit run down. I parked in front of the listed address. The place was a small, aging one-story home with chipped paint and a sagging porch. A dim yellow light glowed through a window. As I got out and headed toward the house, I heard a voice call out from next door. "Hey! That pizza's for us, we gave the wrong address," said a woman, waving from her porch. I paused, a little thrown off, but nodded and walked over to her house instead. The front porch creaked under my feet. The doorbell was busted, so I knocked hard. After about 30 seconds, I knocked again. From inside, a woman yelled, "One SEC." Another full minute passed before the door opened. A woman, probably in her mid-40s, stood there smiling. She looked me up and down in this way that made me instantly uncomfortable. "Shells, come look how cute the delivery guy is," she called over her shoulder. A second woman, about the same age, joined her at the door and gave me the same once-over. My face turned red. I wasn't used to that kind of attention, especially from older women. The first one, probably Karen, asked, "So, what time do you get off work?" I nervously said, "This is probably my last delivery." The second woman grinned. "You want to come in and have some wine with us?" I hesitated. My brain screamed no, but my ego whispered, "Don't mess this up." I said I was 21. They both just laughed. "Don't worry, we won't tell," one of them said. I stepped into the house. They told me to sit on the couch, so I did. They each sat on either side of me, giggling, brushing against my arms, complimenting my dimples, saying how adorably shy I was. I smiled awkwardly and sipped the wine they gave me, pretending I liked it. It tasted awful. Then Chelsea leaned in and said they wanted to show me something cool in the basement. I gave a nervous laugh. Like what? They smiled, almost in sync. It's a surprise. You'll like it. They told me to go down first. Some part of me, the foolish, naive part, was hoping for some fantasy. But as I stood at the top of the basement steps, staring into complete darkness, that hope started to fade. There was no light switch I could see. I turned to ask where it was. That's when I noticed their faces, completely expressionless. Blank. Cold. Then, when they realized I was looking at them, they both smiled again. "What's down there?" I asked, this time more firmly. "Just go. You'll see," they said together. I stepped down one stair, peering into the shadows. That's when I saw it. A hand, or maybe an arm, just barely shift in the blackness below. My stomach dropped. I turned and saw both women slowly moving toward the doorway behind me, like they were trying to close it without me noticing. That was enough. I quickly stepped back, shut the basement door, and muttered, "I still need payment for the pizza." I tried to sound confident as I inched toward the front door. Then I saw him. A massive man, easily over 6 feet tall, stepped halfway out of the kitchen. His face was hard to read, but his presence was enough to freeze me. He stared me down and calmly said 5 chilling words. "Let's just make this easy." I spun, grabbed the doorknob, and said, "You can keep the pizza." I yanked the door open, bolted to my car, and slammed the door shut just as it swung open behind me. I hit the lock button, heart hammering in my chest. But he was already there. Right outside the passenger window. Staring. He tried the door handle. Locked. Then he knocked, just once, softly. I didn't wait. I threw the car in drive and floored it out of there. I didn't even look back. Back at the shop, I told Mario, my boss, what had happened. Everyone listened in stunned silence. I ended up calling the local non-emergency police line to file a report. I wanted it documented, in case something else ever happened at that address. To this day, I don't know what was waiting for me in that basement, and thank God I never found out. Let me tell you a story passed down from my great-grandfather, Michael Bennett. He's 101 years old now and has been telling this same chilling story at every family gathering for as long as I can remember. He was born in the early 1920s in a small Pennsylvania town, and like many young men of his generation, he served during World War II. He fought in Europe, and after the war ended, he returned home to start fresh. The story he shares takes place sometime during the final winter of the war, shortly after a lesser-known battle in the French countryside, something called the Ridge of St. Lo. He always says it wasn't a big-name battle, but it was brutal all the same. That night, the snow was falling heavy, and the wind was sharp like razors. Michael and his unit were staying in an old farmhouse that had somehow avoided getting bombed to pieces. It was warm inside. That alone made it feel like a blessing. There were fires burning in the hearth, and the men were laughing, drinking whatever they could scrounge, telling jokes, and singing songs to celebrate surviving another fight. At some point in the evening, 2 other soldiers came in loud, obnoxious guys no one really liked. Michael always said he and his buddy Sam tried to avoid them when they could. So when Sam asked if he wanted to step outside for a smoke, Michael grabbed his coat without a second thought. It was freezing out there, cold enough to make your eyes water. But they lit up their cigarettes and stood quietly under the stars, talking and savoring the peace, however temporary. Just 2 guys trying to catch their breath after months of chaos. That's when they heard it. A scream. Distant. Sharp. It came from somewhere deep in the woods nearby. Their laughter stopped. Instinct kicked in. Maybe one of their guys had wandered off and run into a German patrol. They rushed back inside, grabbed their rifles, and got a few more men to go with them. Together, they jogged into the woods with their boots crunching through fresh snow and breath puffing in the air like smoke. Michael said as soon as they stepped beneath the trees, something felt wrong. Like the forest itself was holding its breath. After a few minutes of silence, he suggested they break up into pairs. He and Sam went one way, the others scattered in different directions. About 2 minutes in, they heard something soft crying. A voice, pained and distant. They followed it. That's when they saw the blood. Dark droplets in the snow. Something bad had happened here. Michael said even thinking about this next part still makes his hands shake. They came upon a small clearing. 2 German soldiers were there. One was already dead. The other was curled up by a tree, bleeding badly, muttering something over and over in German. His eyes were wide with terror. He didn't even notice Michael and Sam at first. Michael knelt near the body on the ground. The dead man looked like he had been attacked by an animal, only worse. His limbs were twisted, face torn up, patches of his scalp missing. His uniform was shredded like it had gone through a blender. But the strangest part, Michael said, was the smell. It wasn't decay. It wasn't blood. It was something chemical. Artificial. Sharp and wrong. The wounds looked fresh, and yet there wasn't a single footprint in the snow nearby that didn't belong to their group. Sam tried to talk to the living soldier, but the man only shrieked and pointed into the woods, babbling something that sounded like Das Cullis. Michael couldn't figure out what it meant. Whatever he saw, it had driven him past fear and into something else entirely. Sam ended the man's suffering with a single bullet. He never said anything about it afterward. That's when it happened. A sound low and wet, like someone moaning underwater, echoed through the trees. Then, a figure. Tall. Too tall. It darted between the trunks, just beyond the reach of their flashlights. Michael described it as wrongly shaped, like a shadow given legs in rage. He and Sam started firing. The others heard and came running. But the thing was gone before they could get a good look. When they returned to the farmhouse, they were reprimanded for leaving post without orders. A report was filed, but it went nowhere. No one in command wanted to hear stories about ghosts or monsters in the snow. Michael says that was the night he stopped fearing the war and started fearing what he couldn't explain. He still gets quiet when he talks about it. And every time someone asks what he thinks the thing was, he just shakes his head and says, "Some things aren't meant to be understood." What do you think it was? Have you ever heard something you couldn't explain out in the woods? This all started when my fiancée, Emily, and I moved into our first home together in a small, quiet town called Pine Hollow, nestled somewhere between a sleepy highway and a forgotten state forest. We still live in that house. It was a cozy little place and modest, but perfect for the 2 of us and maybe a couple of kids someday. We were excited to make it our own. Almost immediately, we met one of our neighbors, an older couple in their late 60s. Sweet folks. The neighbors on the other side were farther away, tucked behind some dense trees, so we didn't meet them right away. We were still in the thick of unpacking, still figuring out what went where. Maybe it was the second week in. We were wiped every night, working all day and then coming home just to keep building furniture and cleaning boxes. One night, Emily was making spaghetti in the kitchen. I was sitting nearby at the dining table, browsing for area rugs on my laptop and chatting with her while she stirred the sauce. The house felt a little warm, so I figured I'd crack open the sliding glass door to the backyard and let in some air. But the second I approached it, I froze. There was someone sitting in one of our patio chairs. Just sitting there. Head down. Shoulders slumped. Totally still. When I say my blood turned cold, I mean it. I whispered, "Emily, don't scream, but there's someone in the yard." She walked over, took one glance through the glass, and gasped. Her fingers gripped my arm as she ducked behind me. Should we say something? Wait, no, don't, she panicked. Honestly, I had no idea what to do. I'm not exactly some big, intimidating guy. And even from behind, sitting hunched over, this man looked larger than me. Emily whispered, knock on the glass. Tell him to leave. But I hesitated. He hadn't moved. He was just there. The backyard was spacious, and right outside the sliding door was an old patio set left by the previous owner. The yard lights weren't on, but our kitchen lights cast enough glow through the glass for us to see him. Which meant he could definitely see us too. I took a deep breath, knocked hard on the glass, and yelled, "Hey! You need to leave." That's when he moved. He turned his head slowly and looked straight at me. He stood up with this eerie, half-smile, like he found the whole thing funny. The guy looked to be in his early 50s, with a long, scraggly gray beard and both arms covered in faded tattoos. He walked straight up to the glass, right up to our door. I made sure it was locked. Then, without warning, his gaze shifted to Emily. He started licking his lips and mumbling disgusting things. Real sick stuff. I snapped. I'm calling the cops. I shouted, pulling the blinds shut. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, begging the dispatcher to hurry. While I was on the phone, we could still hear the guy muttering on the other side of the glass, his voice rising. I pressed the phone against the door so the operator could hear him. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line until officers arrived. Eventually, everything went quiet. I peeked through the blinds. He was gone. I exhaled. When the police got there, they searched the yard, wrote up a report, and told us to call if anything else happened. We thought it was over. But that night, as we were trying to unwind in the living room, we heard something again. A soft, shifting sound like someone walking in the yard. I crept to the front window and carefully kinked the blinds. And there he was. Standing again in the yard. Smoking a cigarette. Talking to himself. Maybe to us. Just standing and mumbling toward the house. He must have noticed the movement in the blinds because he suddenly darted toward the window. I stumbled back just as he started pounding on the glass, screaming even more horrific things I won't repeat, about Emily. I told her to go upstairs. I didn't want her to hear this. I'm calling the police again. I yelled through the glass. Suddenly, it went silent. No pounding. No voice. I waited a moment, peeked again, and just like before, gone. I ran upstairs. Emily was curled up on the bed, shaking. I told her he was gone, trying to sound calm, but inside I was terrified. Then came the sound. A rattling. From downstairs. I paused on the staircase. I heard the back doorknob twisting, the door bumping, someone trying to get in. I bolted for the kitchen phone and called 911 again. My voice was shaking as I pleaded with the dispatcher to send someone now. I stayed on the line, crouched behind the kitchen island. This time, the police arrived faster. I didn't make any noise that could have warned the man. But when the cops came, just like before, he was gone. Probably slipped into the woods behind the house. We didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, we went door to door, introducing ourselves and describing the man. Eventually, a couple 4 houses down recognized the description immediately. "You mean Rick?" the man asked. "Yeah, he's bad news." They told us he lived nearby in a beat-up house on the next block. He had a long history of domestic violence, substance abuse, and was known to wander the neighborhood sometimes, especially when drunk. We gave the police his name, but since we didn't get any of it on video, they couldn't press charges. We haven't seen him since. And I pray we never do again. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, Let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I've never really been the birthday type. I don't throw parties or post anything on social media. My close friends know that, so when the day rolls around, it's usually just dinner with my family or a quiet hangout with one or two people I trust. This one year in particular, after dinner with my folks, a few of my friends were texting to see if I wanted to do something chill. Nothing wild, we were all 19 at the time and still way underage for bars. My buddy Ethan had this old Wrangler Jeep and suggested we go off-roading through the Pine Rock Reserve, about 30 minutes out from our little town of Fairhaven. It's this big state forest out past the suburbs. He'd driven the trails before, even though you're not technically allowed to take cars on them. After dark, though, the place is deserted. No rangers, no lights. Just miles of trails and trees. Since my birthday's in mid-July, the sun didn't fully set until after 9. Around that time, we loaded up the Jeep, Ethan driving, me riding shotgun, and our other two friends, Chris and Devin, piling into the back. Chris brought a few joints, and Devin brought a half-empty bottle of cheap vodka. I wasn't planning on getting trashed or anything. It was more about the vibe, just music, forest, and stars. The park entrance gets blocked off at night with cones, but there's no gate or guard. Ethan pulled up slow, looked both ways for any cops, then hopped out to move the cone. We slipped past and started down this one-way paved road lined with woods on either side. Eventually it opened up into a big parking lot surrounded by forest, except for one corner where there were baseball fields and an old playground. Ethan knew exactly where to turn to hit the walking trails, which were wide enough in some places to drive on, at least, according to him. He flipped on the brights, and we started down the dirt trail. It was narrow in parts, so we took it easy to avoid scraping the sides or bottom of the Jeep. It actually felt like a ride at an amusement park, bumpy, kind of thrilling, and a little reckless. Chris lit up a joint and passed it around. We were maybe 15 minutes into the trail when Ethan pulled over, turned off the engine, and cut the lights. The forest swallowed us in quiet. The only sound was the music playing low through the speakers and the occasional crack of branches outside. We were mid-laugh about something stupid when all of us paused. It was like an unspoken tension pulled us out of our haze. "Did you guys hear that?" Devin asked. We all went silent. Even the music stopped. It had sounded like a scream, high-pitched, distant, but not an animal. Ethan clicked the headlights on. Nothing. Just trees. But we still decided to drive a little further, just in case. After a bit, he parked again. We talked it over, decided maybe it was a fox. Someone said female foxes scream like that sometimes. We lowered the volume on the music and started making mixed drinks in plastic cups. At one point, the guys broke into a loud, off-key rendition of Happy Birthday just to mess with me. A little while later, I had to pee. I stepped out, walked a few feet off the trail, just into the trees. I was halfway through when I heard it, soft, but definite, footsteps. Close. I zipped up and hurried back to the car, telling them what I heard. Ethan turned the headlights back on. He and I looked up at the same moment and gasped. 10 feet ahead, standing just off the trail, was a woman. Hood up. Not moving. She didn't say anything. She just stood there. Ethan rolled his window down a bit. "You okay?" She didn't respond. She just slowly stepped backward into the trees, disappearing into the dark. Before we could react, Chris, somehow clear-headed despite being completely baked, said something that made all of us freeze. "Guys," he whispered. "We're surrounded." We looked in every direction. There were people, at least 3 more, standing off in the woods, spaced out, all of them in dark hoodies, just watching us. No movement. No talking. Just standing there. faces hidden in the shadows. This was July. It was warm. Humid. No reason for heavy clothes. No reason to be out there. Then Devon screamed. He was staring at the back window. A man was standing right behind the Jeep. His face was pale. His expression blank. The red glow from our taillights lit up his features in this eerie, unnatural way. I shouted, "Go! Drive now!" Ethan didn't ask questions. He threw it into drive and sped off down the trail, bouncing over rocks and dips, branches scraping the sides, tires skidding on loose dirt. The ride out felt like it took forever, but we finally burst out onto the pavement through a side exit. We didn't speak for the next few minutes. Just heavy breathing and heartbeats in our ears. Once we calmed down, we tried to explain it away. Maybe it was some group of people messing around like we were. But if that were true, why just stand there? Why so silent? Why the hooded figures in every direction? And that woman, she never made a sound. Never moved toward us. Just faded back like a ghost. As for that scream we'd heard earlier, we stopped saying it was a fox. We never went back. And none of us ever brought up night off-roading again. I'll never forget my little sister Emily's 5th birthday, but not for any good reason. We had her party at this adorable tea parlor in a small town called Willow Creek. It was one of those places that specializes in hosting princess-themed birthdays, with costumes, tiaras, and tea sets. Every little girl there was dressed like a fairy tale character. I was in 6th grade at the time, trying hard to look cool, so I didn't want to be part of any of it. Instead, I sat alone in the hallway outside the party room, glued to my Nintendo DS. That's when a woman I didn't recognize walked up to me. She had kind eyes and a soft voice. She leaned in slightly and said, "Hey, you're Rachel's kid, right?" Rachel is my mom's name, so I nodded and said, "Yeah." The woman smiled warmly. "I'm your Aunt Karen. I'm sure you don't remember me, it's been a long time. You've gotten so big." She asked me how school was going, and I gave her the usual kind of answers kids give adults. I was used to relatives popping in and out of our lives, so I didn't question it. Then she said she had brought this huge wooden dollhouse for Emily's birthday. She said it was too heavy for her to carry alone and asked if I could help her bring it in from the car. She added that she also brought a cake and told me I could have the first slice if I helped her out. Now, I wasn't a little kid, I was almost 12, and we'd had the school talks about stranger danger. I knew this felt almost like a scene out of a PSA on kidnappings. But the way she talked, how calm she was, it disarmed me. Plus, I admit I let my guard down because she was a woman. It felt less threatening somehow. So I agreed. We exited through the back door of the tea shop. Her car was running just outside the alley. In the driver's seat was a man I didn't recognize. That was when I felt something was really off. She noticed my hesitation. "Oh, that's your Uncle Dave," she said quickly. "We just didn't want to lose the parking spot. Let's hurry before the cake melts in the sun." But something didn't sit right. Why hadn't Dave helped carry the dollhouse in? Why didn't they just park properly like everyone else? My gut twisted. I stopped moving. Something was wrong. Karen's face changed. She became more urgent, her tone sharper. "Come on," she said. "Just help me already." When I didn't budge, she grabbed the sleeve of my jacket. I swatted her hand away and shouted, "Let go." Her friendly smile was gone. Now she looked angry. Dave moved like he might get out of the car. That's when we heard voices. My mom and my real Aunt Susan were calling my name, loudly, from inside. Karen turned, ran to the car, jumped in, and they peeled off down the alleyway. I ran back inside and met my mom halfway in the hallway. I told her everything, barely able to breathe. She hugged me tight and kept saying, "It's okay. You're safe. It's okay." My aunt ran to alert the staff, and the tea parlor went into immediate lockdown. All the kids were gathered into the central room. They did a head count to make sure no one else had wandered off. Luckily, everyone was accounted for. The police arrived shortly after. I told them what the woman had said, what the man looked like, what kind of car they had. I remembered bits and pieces, her curly blonde hair, his red baseball cap, a dent on the passenger side door. The officers nodded as they took notes and told me they'd contact us if they found anything. But we never heard back. No updates. No names. No arrests. To this day, I have no idea how that woman knew my mom's name. Maybe she overheard it. Maybe she knew us from somewhere. I don't like to think too much about it. I just try to be thankful. Thankful that I paused. That I listened to that uneasy feeling in my gut. Thankful I didn't walk closer to that trunk. Because sometimes your instincts are the only thing standing between you and something you might never come back from. What do you think would have happened if I had taken one more step? My uncle, Mark, is one of those guys who made it big early. He's got a gorgeous house in Pine Lake, right on the edge of the water. Big backyard, outdoor fireplace, infinity pool, the kind of place that feels like it belongs in a movie. So, when he offered to let me use his backyard for my 21st birthday while he was out of town, I jumped at the chance. I'd never thrown a big party before, and this seemed like the perfect excuse. I told all my friends to come and to bring whoever they wanted, as long as they brought their own drinks. The party was supposed to start at 8. Mark had a top-tier sound system installed outside. I hooked up a backup phone and played one of those pre-made party mixes. I made one rule: no one was allowed inside the house unless they were using the bathroom. Everything else had to stay outdoors. But people kept showing up. At first, it was fun, just good vibes. But then I noticed people I didn't recognize walking through the side gate in groups. Friends of friends, I guessed. I figured it was fine. Until it wasn't. At one point, I counted over 80 people crammed into the backyard. I started stressing about how trashed the place would be the next day. I tried to keep an eye on who was going in and out of the house, but it was impossible to monitor everyone. Still, I did my best. Sometime around midnight, a neighbor must have called the cops, because 2 squad cars showed up and shut the whole thing down. They were polite but firm. Everyone had to leave. I was embarrassed but honestly kind of relieved. When the crowd finally cleared out, only about 10 of us were left. That number quickly dropped to just me and my buddy Rob. He was so wasted he could barely stand. I knew my uncle had said no overnight guests, but I couldn't just send Rob home like that. He was in no shape to drive or Uber. So I helped him inside and laid him down on the couch. I locked both side gates, double-checked the sliding glass doors, and made sure the back door was locked too. When I came back in, Rob was already out cold, snoring gently. I took a quick look around. The bathroom wasn't too bad, just a couple beer cans on the sink. Nothing crazy. The cleanup wouldn't be awful. Rob could help in the morning. I headed upstairs to crash in one of the guest rooms. The second floor had this big, open balcony that overlooked the main foyer. I passed the upstairs lounge and a couple spare bedrooms before ducking into the guest bathroom to brush my teeth with my finger. I was too tired, and drunk, to care. I passed out almost instantly. But maybe an hour later, I woke up feeling sick. Like, gut churning, can't keep it down sick. I bolted to the bathroom and threw up everything I'd had that night. Still dizzy, I staggered out into the open upstairs hallway. The house was quiet until I heard footsteps in the foyer below. I walked to the balcony railing and looked down. "Rob?" I called out softly. In the dim light, I saw a figure standing still by the front door. Just standing there. I couldn't make out their face, but I could feel them staring up at me. The air felt heavier all of a sudden. Then, I heard snoring again, coming from the living room. Rob was still asleep. Which meant, the person below wasn't Rob. My skin crawled. I called out, trying to sound casual, "Hey, who is that?" thinking maybe someone had passed out earlier and was just now waking up. No answer. Then came another sound, footsteps, this time from the kitchen. My heart thudded. I tried to act unfazed. "All right, I'm heading back to bed," I said, hoping to make it sound like I didn't see them. I quietly slipped back into the guest room and locked the door. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone. I had to warn Rob. I called his number. It rang, then someone picked up. "Rob?" I whispered. No answer, just slow, steady breathing. "Rob, it's me. Are you awake?" Still nothing. Just breathing. I hung up and immediately called 911. While I was whispering to the operator, trying to explain what was going on, I heard the doorknob rattle. Then came a knock. Soft. Deliberate. I whispered, "Should I say I'm on the phone with the police?" The operator quickly said no. "Don't speak. Don't reveal yourself." "What about my friend?" I asked. "He's downstairs. He's passed out." There was a pause on the line. "Just stay locked in the room," the operator said. "Help is on the way. If they think he's asleep, they might leave him alone." I hated that idea, but I understood. I stayed frozen by the door, barely breathing, listening to every creak and rustle in the hallway outside. The dispatcher finally said, "Officers are at the property. They're going around back." Moments later, I heard the faint sound of the sliding door opening. The police must have found it unlocked. My stomach dropped. One of the intruders had left it open. I stayed put until the officer on the line told me I could come out. I ran downstairs and shook Rob awake. He blinked up at me, totally confused and still drunk. 2 officers were sweeping the house with flashlights. I explained everything while they walked room to room. Nothing obvious was missing. I wasn't sure if anything had even been taken. My uncle's bedroom door was locked, and the rest of the house looked untouched. But that didn't mean much. This wasn't my place. I didn't know what should have been there to begin with. Before they left, the officers told me they'd keep a patrol car nearby for the rest of the night. That helped, a little. I didn't tell my uncle what happened. Not at first. It wasn't until a few weeks later, when he asked me if I'd seen his Cartier watch, that I had to come clean. He kept it in a drawer by the kitchen. It was gone. He wasn't furious. But he was definitely disappointed. He never asked me to pay him back. But he also never offered up the house for another party again. And honestly, I never would have taken him up on it if he had. I live in a coastal town called Pine Haven. It's one of those places where life slows down in the summer, beach days, backyard barbecues, and cozy fire pits at night. Most weekends, we'd hit the boardwalk or grab drinks at one of the seaside bars. But lately, things had started to shift. I'm in my late 20s now. A lot of my close guy friends have settled down, gotten engaged, or moved on from our spontaneous nights out. Making plans had become harder. People were pairing off, and I was, well, floating in between. One Saturday night, I finally rallied a few friends to go out. We ended up at a cozy little pub with old wooden floors and the smell of salt in the air. It felt like any other summer night until 2 guys joined us at the bar. They'd overheard something we were laughing about and chimed in. They introduced themselves, Andrew and Tyler. They looked like they were maybe mid-30s, a little older, but they seemed harmless. Shorter than average, kind of scruffy, but polite and laid back. They bar-hopped with us for a while. Andrew dipped out early, but Tyler stuck around. He seemed most interested in me, talked to me the most, stood a little closer than necessary. Nothing creepy at the time, just noticeable. Eventually, my friends called it a night. I was ready to head out too. Tyler seemed disappointed, like he'd hoped we'd stay out until last call. I reassured him we'd all hang again soon. He nodded, but I remember a flicker of something strange in his eyes, something unreadable. The next weekend, everyone flaked on plans again. It was one of those nights where you just scroll through your phone hoping something will come up. That's when I got a text from Tyler. "What are you up to tonight?" I replied honestly, no plans. He said we should hit up this beach bar near the dunes. It was a local spot with a dance floor and cheap drinks. I hesitated, but remembered he and Andrew had seemed decent enough. I agreed. He offered to pick me up, and I accepted. When he arrived, I walked outside expecting to hop into the back seat. I figured Andrew would be riding shotgun. But when I opened the back door, Tyler said, "Nah, hop in the front." I paused. It was just him. No Andrew. No one else. On the drive, I casually asked if Andrew or anyone else was meeting up. He shrugged. "Probably. We'll see who's around." It wasn't what I expected, but I let it go. He suggested we hit a dive bar first to pregame before heading to the beach club. I agreed again, trying to stay open. The place he took me to? Total hole in the wall. No windows. Red neon lights glowing like some low-budget horror film. There were only 2 other people at the bar. The air was stale, and the bartender looked half asleep. Tyler ordered drinks, rounds of them. I'd already had a couple shots back home, so by the second drink, I felt my head spin. I excused myself to the bathroom, and when I got back, there were 2 more drinks waiting. I hadn't even finished my last one. Something about how eager he was to keep me drinking unsettled me, but I told myself to stop overthinking. Maybe it was just an older guy thing, trying to impress. But after that last drink, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a cold, concrete floor. Pitch dark. I reached for my phone, but my pockets were empty. My heart thudded hard in my chest. I stood slowly, arms out in front of me, trying to feel the walls. My fingers eventually brushed a light switch. When the bulb flickered on, it revealed a tiny room more like a utility closet. There was a hot water heater in the corner, a rusted mop bucket, and cleaning supplies. There was a single door. I opened it slowly. It creaked into another pitch-black space. I stepped forward, light from the small room casting a weak glow. I was in a finished basement, carpeted, with old furniture, but no windows. I couldn't find a light switch, so I groped around blindly, bumping into a coffee table, a chair, something soft. I was trying to find stairs when I heard movement behind me. Then came a voice, familiar and calm, like nothing was wrong. "Hey, it's okay. You're fine. You drank too much, so I brought you back here. Tyler." I turned quickly but could only see his silhouette. "Where's my phone?" "My wallet?" I asked. My voice sounded far away, like it didn't belong to me. He stepped closer. "Upstairs. I didn't want you to lose anything. Just relax. Lay down." I backed away. "No. I'm leaving. Give me my stuff." His tone shifted, low, firm. "You're not going anywhere." That's when panic hit me full force. I threatened him, told him I'd scream, call the cops, anything. He didn't care. He stepped forward and whispered something chilling. "You're too drunk to drive. Just stay." I told him I'd call an Uber. He ignored that. Said he'd get me a glass of water. I didn't believe a word. He walked up the stairs and, at the top, I heard a click, the unmistakable sound of a lock turning. He locked me in. I looked around the basement, no phone, no windows, no way out. I searched for something to defend myself with, anything. But there was nothing. So I waited. I stood by the door, barely breathing. 5 minutes passed. Then the lock turned again. As the door creaked open, I launched forward. I tackled him, pinned him down, my arm around his throat. "Where is my phone? My wallet?" He choked out. "On the kitchen table." "I swear." "You have a weapon?" "Switchblade, pocket." I yanked it from his jeans and flicked it open. He froze. Then muttered, "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was looking out for you." I didn't respond. I let him go and ran upstairs. My phone and wallet were on the table, just like he said. I grabbed them and bolted out the door. Outside, I called my brother. He's my roommate too. He picked up groggy and confused, but when I said, "I need you to come get me now," he didn't ask questions. He found me a few blocks away, barefoot and shaking. The next morning, I went to urgent care. Blood work confirmed rohypnol. I'd been drugged. Later that week, I hired a lawyer. We're now building a civil case against Tyler. There's no solid proof it was him, but the locked door, the missing belongings, the shady behavior, it all adds up. To this day, I don't know what his plan was. I don't know what he did while I was unconscious. And honestly, I don't want to know. But I've learned to trust my instincts. And I'll never step into a stranger's car again. Have you ever ignored a red flag that nearly cost you everything? In the summertime, I love being outdoors. I usually spend the break with my folks at their cabin near Pine Hollow, Oregon. We've got a few acres out there, surrounded by dense pine woods. There's an old barn we converted into a tool shed, a couple of ATVs, and winding trails cutting through the trees, perfect for exploring. That afternoon was warm but cloudy, and I was restless. I grabbed my mountain bike from the shed, deciding a short ride would clear my head. The sky had that eerie look, yellow sunlight bleeding through thick gray clouds, like the weather couldn't decide if it wanted to storm or not. The air smelled like wet bark and rain, that earthy scent right before a summer thunderstorm rolls in. I checked the radar on my phone, looked like I had at least 30 minutes before the rain hit. That was plenty of time for a quick trail loop. Even if I got caught in it, I didn't mind. The stormy air felt alive somehow, and I've always loved biking in that kind of mood. The first part of the trail heads uphill. It's a good workout, but coming back down is always the reward, just let gravity do its thing. There's this small clearing near the top where the trees open up a bit. I usually stop there to catch my breath and just enjoy the quiet. When I reached the clearing, I pulled off the trail and parked my bike. I leaned on the handlebars, scrolling through my phone, answering a couple of texts. Then, everything went quiet. No wind. No leaves rustling. Just dead silence. I froze. It was like the forest was holding its breath. Even the birds had stopped chirping. I looked up, expecting to see the trees still swaying, but they were still. Completely still. It was unsettling. And then, I heard it. A high-pitched sound, almost like a whisper, but it didn't sound human. It was distant and soft, but too sharp to ignore. My gut told me it wasn't just an animal. The stillness, the clouds, that weird voice, it all blended into this suffocating sense of dread. I turned my head and scanned the woods ahead, That's when I saw it. Maybe 30 or 40 feet away, just barely visible between two trees, a figure. It was crouched low, shaped like a person but wrong. It looked too thin. Too bent. Like it wasn't built to stand upright. And it was watching me. I felt it. That hungry, cold stare. And then, the rain came. Hard. It hit the canopy above with a roar, snapping me out of the trance. I didn't think. I just turned my bike around and flew down that hill like my life depended on it. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to know if that thing was following. Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning lit up the trail ahead of me in harsh flashes, showing twisted shadows in the woods. Every root, every bump in the path felt like it might throw me off, but I kept pedaling. My legs burned, but I didn't stop. When I made it back to the cabin, I dumped the bike in the shed, ran inside soaked to the bone, and didn't say a word. I didn't even care to explain. I just went straight upstairs and crawled under the covers. That night, the dreams came. In them, I was back in the woods. The figure stood under the trees, and this time, it wasn't just watching. It floated. Slowly. Silently. Coming toward me with glowing eyes and a face I couldn't quite see. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I woke up sweating, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I never told anyone about what I saw that day. Maybe I was just overtired. Maybe it was a trick of the light and the weather messing with my head. But even now, sometimes, when the sky turns yellow and the forest goes still, I remember that shape in the trees. And I wonder, what if it's still out there?
Every July, when the air turned thick with heat and cicadas buzzed like a lullaby, my parents would head to our summer cabin in Lake Echo, Colorado. That left me at home in Pine Hollow, a quiet little town tucked just outside Denver, with nothing but our 2 cats and the freedom of an empty house. Our place sat on the edge of a sleepy river bend. Dad had a sleek pontoon boat tied to the small dock out back, plus a couple of jet skis resting on their racks. Across the river lay dense woodland, and just a little downstream sat a small, rarely used riverside trail that led into the forest. Not many folks passed through this part of town. The house was quiet, private, almost too quiet at night. Honestly, it always felt like Dad had spent more on the boat than the house. It got plenty of looks. I always looked forward to those weeks when they were gone. Summer break, no work, and I had the place to myself. As long as I didn't throw a party, I could invite whoever I wanted over. One warm evening, I had a girl I'd been seeing for a couple weeks come by. Let's call her Emily. We chilled in the hot tub under a hazy orange sunset, sipping soda and talking about nothing. As the hot tub's jets cut off and the night fell into silence, I heard something out by the river. At first, I figured it was just a frog splashing or maybe a heron landing nearby, but this sound had rhythm, steady strokes, soft waves. I stood up to take a look. Out in the dark water, I spotted someone slowly kayaking past the dock. I couldn't make out a face, couldn't even tell if they were male or female. Just the silhouette of a kayak gliding quietly by. It was odd. This far up the river at that hour? We hardly saw boats even during the day. I told Emily it was strange, but we shrugged it off. Public water, after all. It didn't seem like something to be worried about. But I didn't know then that wouldn't be the last time we saw that person. Later that night, upstairs in my bedroom, we were curled up under the AC watching an old episode of The Twilight Zone. The windows were shut, but they faced the river out back. Emily had dozed off next to me, and I had just clicked off the lamp, letting the TV glow dimly in the dark. That's when a light, bright and erratic, began to flash through the window. It jerked around like someone was waving it wildly. Emily blinked awake. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. Not a helicopter, I said, answering her guess before she could say it. Looks like a flashlight. I turned off the TV. The room went still, the only sound was the hum of the AC. I moved quietly to the side of the window, careful not to stand in full view, and peeked out through the blind. There, bobbing just beyond the dock, was a figure in a kayak, holding a flashlight and sweeping the beam toward our window. It's that same person, I told Emily. From earlier. She sat up slowly. Why are they shining it at your room? Probably saw the light from the TV, I whispered. They knew someone was up here. Something instinctual stirred in me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was that old school need to not look afraid in front of a girl. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I opened the window and called out, "What do you want?" A weak voice called back, "Please. I need help." I tensed. Are you hurt? Lost? I'm injured, the man said. I can't get out of the kayak. I turned to Emily. What should I do? She hesitated, then said, maybe go check on him? Want me to call 911? I called out. No, the voice said quickly. Just help me get out. I told him I'd come down. Then I shut the window inside. Wish me luck, I said to Emily. She stayed in bed, barely dressed. I didn't want to make her get up. I threw on a t-shirt and slipped on my sandals, then made my way downstairs. I flipped on the backyard lights and stepped outside. The humid air clung to my skin. The river shimmered quietly in the glow. Then a scream. Luke! Emily screamed my name from upstairs. Her voice cracked with terror. I spun around. There was a man charging at me from the riverbank. I barely had time to react. I bolted back inside, slammed the door, and locked it just as the man threw himself against it with a deafening thud. The knob twisted wildly as he tried to get in. Heart pounding, I grabbed the whole knife block from the kitchen and sprinted back upstairs. I locked the bedroom door behind me. Emily was shaking. I saw him, she said breathlessly. The second you turned on the lights, he was sneaking up behind you. He was huge. This wasn't some weak man in distress. He had been lying, lurking, waiting. We huddled in the room, silent except for our breath and the occasional creak of the house settling. I called my dad and told him what happened. His voice was tight with worry. Call the police, he said. Now. So I did. The officers came out, searched the property, filed a report. They knocked on a few neighbors' doors, but no one had seen anything. The creepiest part? The kayak was gone. He must have grabbed it before slipping into the woods across the river. Or maybe deeper into the marsh. I think now that he had been watching the house. Maybe even knew my parents were gone. The boat out back, the expensive gear, the secluded yard, we probably looked like easy prey. I keep thinking, what if Emily hadn't been there that night? Would I have heard him sneaking up behind me? Would I have even made it back inside?
I was 19 and working part-time at a local pizza joint called Johnny Slice just outside Silver Pines, a quiet town in the Midwest. I needed the extra money to cover gas, groceries, and honestly, just to get out of the house. The job was usually chill, take the order, pack the food, toss it in a delivery bag, and drive it over. I'd done it 1,000 times before. Nothing weird. Nothing memorable. Tips usually ranged between $3 and $5. Sometimes you'd get lucky with a 10. That night's order was nothing special, just a meatball sub and a regular pepperoni slice. Smaller orders like that meant smaller tips, but hey, I didn't get to pick my deliveries. The address I was given led me toward the outer edge of town, a stretch where the tidy suburbs faded into old farmland. The sun had dipped behind the trees by then, and everything was coated in this soft orange hue that quickly turned gray. The neighborhood started looking more rural, houses were spaced farther apart, yards were unkempt, and one even had an RV parked in tall grass. Then I pulled up to the address. It was a small, single-story house with a wide, empty lawn. Right next to it was what looked like an abandoned home swallowed by wild shrubs and ivy. The weird part? The house I was delivering to had no lights on, and the front door was cracked open. That was off. Most people waiting on food have the porch light on at least. Still, I got out of the car, pizza bag in hand, and started walking toward the door. That's when I heard it, soft piano music. It wasn't coming from the living room. It sounded distant, like it was echoing through a few walls. Muffled. Faint. But steady. I knocked. No answer. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. Didn't even hear a chime. The music kept playing. I wasn't about to just walk in, so I circled around the side of the house. The backyard was a disaster, broken furniture, old tools scattered across the grass, and a rusted-out chain-link fence laying in a heap. It felt forgotten. I tried the back door, knocked real loud. Still no answer. Through the glass, I could see what looked like a cluttered mudroom, boots, jackets, and junk piled everywhere. Whoever lived here clearly didn't care about appearances. Confused, I stepped back out front and called my coworker, Jake, back at Johnny's. "Hey man, can you double-check that address?" He paused, tapped around a bit, and said, "Yep. That's the one." So I went back to the front, nudged the door open a little more, and peeked inside. "Pizza's here," I called out. The piano stopped. Then, after a short pause, a voice called back, "Over here." And the music started again. The tune was weird and simple, almost like a lullaby, but offbeat. It kept looping. The place was dim, no lights, just the dying daylight sneaking in through the windows. I stepped into the foyer. The air was thick and musty, like damp clothes and something metallic. I didn't want to go any further. "I'm right by the front door," I called. The piano stopped again. Silence. Then a voice, closer this time, "Yes, sorry. I have trouble walking. Could you just bring it in here, please?" "Which room are you in, sir?" I asked. A pause. Then, just through the living room. "I'm in the dining room." Something felt off. There were no special instructions on the app. Nothing about physical disabilities or special assistance. I stood still for a moment, thinking. Maybe it was an elderly man. Maybe he really couldn't walk well. I didn't want to leave him hanging. Still cautious, I stepped into the living room. The place was dark, and the only light came from a dusty window in the corner. The piano music had stopped completely. I inched toward the archway leading to the dining room. Instead of stepping fully inside, I leaned just enough to peek around the corner. The piano sat against the far wall. But no one was sitting there. No one was in the room. Just a chair. A table. And the piano. I backed away slowly. No footsteps. No voices. Just that awful, musty smell. I didn't say another word. I quietly turned, made my way back to the door, slipped outside, and shut it gently behind me. I got in my car and didn't stop driving until I was back at Johnny's. Jake took one look at me and asked, "Dude, what happened?" I told him everything. He didn't even question it. Just nodded and said, "Yeah, you did the right thing." The customer never called back. Never complained. Never asked why their food never arrived. That said it all. Later that night, just out of curiosity, or maybe a gut feeling, I looked up the address online. Turns out, that house had been foreclosed 6 months ago. Vacant ever since. When I told the crew, their jaws hit the floor. I wasn't just being paranoid. I had stepped into something no one could explain. Maybe someone was squatting. Maybe it was a setup. Or maybe it was something worse. All I know is, I was a few steps away from something that didn't want pizza. Something that waited in the dark, playing that piano over and over. What do you think it wanted from me? Have you ever walked into a place that just felt wrong? It was my last week working at a small Italian-American place in Pine Hollow, a quiet town nestled between forest edges and forgotten backroads. The restaurant had a cozy pizzeria in the front and a classic sit-down dining area in the back. Depending on the day, I'd be behind the counter, bussing tables, or out on delivery runs. Deliveries were my favorite. They meant tip money and some fresh air. Funny how my last delivery ever would turn into something I still lose sleep over. It was late, just past 9:30 p.m. when the ticket came in. 3 deluxe pizzas. The total was just under $70. A good-sized order, but the address, it was on the outskirts. Near the edge of town, close to where the woods creep in and the streetlights start to disappear. Folks around here called that side the Ridge, and not in an affectionate way. Still, I wasn't worried. I drove a beat-up old Corolla, the kind of car no one would bother stealing. I figured I'd be in and out in 10 minutes. The GPS led me to a worn-down ranch house surrounded by trees and a leaning chain-link fence. The porch light was flickering, just barely alive. I climbed out, pizzas in hand, and rang the bell. The door opened almost instantly. A man, probably in his late 30s, peeked out. He was tall, wore a black hoodie, and had tired eyes. Then the door swung open fully. That's when I saw it. He was holding a pistol down by his side. I froze. He didn't say a word. Just stared. Then, from behind him, 2 other men stepped forward. One of them grabbed my arm hard while the man with the gun barked, "Wallet." My throat went dry. I nodded. Shaky hands dug into my jacket pocket, and I handed over my wallet. My voice barely worked. He looked at me and added, "Phone." I pulled it from my jeans. It was an old Samsung. The guy barely looked at it before tossing it to the couch. Then one of them yanked my arm again and pulled off my watch. It wasn't worth much, but they took it anyway. Then came the part that scared me most. The man with the gun flipped open my wallet, found my ID, and read my address out loud. He leaned in closer and said, "You tell anyone, we come for your family." I nodded. I didn't even try to speak. I couldn't. Then one of them shoved me hard. I stumbled off the porch and landed on the gravel walkway, scraping my hands and knees. My breath caught in my chest as I heard the door slam shut behind me. Keys were all I had left. I didn't go back to the pizza place. I just drove straight home. When I walked through the door, my parents were in the living room. They saw the blood on my legs, the dirt on my clothes, the way my hands were shaking. My mom kept asking what happened. I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want to put them in danger. But I broke down. I told them everything. My dad listened quietly, then stood up and walked to the kitchen. He picked up the landline and called someone from his old days. He used to work with the local sheriff's department before retiring. I heard him say the address. Heard him say the name, Rodrigo. That man had a record for felony convictions. And now he'd robbed someone at gunpoint. The next day, a task force moved in fast. Police cruisers blocked both ends of the street. Officers with weapons drawn stormed the house. 2 of the men were there. Rodrigo and another. Both were arrested. Rodrigo was sentenced to life. His accomplice, already a felon, got 5 years. But the third guy? Gone. No one found him. No one even got a name. And that's what still haunts me. Sometimes, late at night, I hear something outside. Footsteps near the fence. The side gate creaking. Once, I thought I saw someone standing by the tree line. Maybe it's just fear, tangled up with memory. Or maybe he's still out there. I try to move on. I try to believe he fled the state. That he knows better than to ever come back to Pine Hollow. But when the wind rustles the trees just right, I still listen. Just in case. What would you have done in my place? Would you ever sleep easy again? I live in a small town in Oregon called Cedar Ridge. It's quiet. Lots of trees. Foggy mornings. People leave their doors unlocked. That kind of place. My name is Megan. I'm 27. I used to live in Portland, but I moved back after my brother died last fall. I just couldn't stay there anymore. Everything reminded me of him. So now I live alone in my parents' old house. It's an old wooden place. Built in the 1960s. The floors creak when you walk. The heater rattles. It smells like dust and cold pine. The house is at the end of a quiet road. Woods stretch out behind it. You can hear owls at night. And sometimes coyotes. Last October, I started noticing strange things. It began with the lights. The hallway light would flicker, even though I changed the bulb. Then my phone would buzz in the middle of the night. But there were no messages. Just the screen lighting up. Like someone was watching it. I figured it was just the house settling, or maybe my nerves. I hadn't been sleeping well since moving back. One evening, it was raining hard. Wind pushed against the windows. I made tea and sat on the couch under a blanket. My phone was charging in the kitchen. I heard a sound. A quiet buzzing. Like a phone on vibrate. I thought it was mine, but when I checked, nothing. No calls. No texts. Then I heard it again. Closer this time. But not in the kitchen. It was coming from the wall. Near the back hallway, where the coat closet is. A low, steady vibration. Like an old phone stuck inside the wall. My skin went cold. I pressed my ear to the wall. I could hear it. Soft. Regular. Buzz, buzz, buzz. There were no outlets on that wall. Nothing that could make that sound. I opened the closet. Just coats and boots. But the sound was louder in there. I didn't know what to think. Maybe it was in the crawlspace? That night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about my brother. He died in a car crash. I never got to say goodbye. We used to talk on the phone every night. At around 3 a.m., I heard the buzz again. This time, followed by a click. Like a phone being picked up. Then silence. The next day, I called a handyman. He came and checked the wall. There's nothing in there, he said. Just beams and insulation. I asked if a phone could be trapped inside. He laughed. Not unless someone built the wall around it. But no one had touched that wall in decades. I tried to forget about it. But the buzzing came back. Every night around 3 a.m. Always from the same spot. Then came the voice. It was the night before Halloween. The wind was howling outside. I was lying in bed, eyes open in the dark. Then I heard it. Megan. A whisper. Right next to my ear. I shot up. Heart racing. The room was empty. Then the closet door creaked open on its own. I walked toward it slowly. My hand shook as I reached for the light. Inside, nothing had moved. But the buzzing was back. Louder than ever. Buzz. Buzz. Click. Then a voice. Muffled, like it was coming through an old phone speaker. "Can you hear me?" I stepped back. My breath caught in my throat. It was my brother's voice. I hadn't heard it in months. But I knew it. The tone. The way he said those words. The way he always answered the phone. I whispered, "James?" There was silence. Then static. Then, crying. Soft, broken sobs coming from the wall. I slammed the closet door shut and ran out of the house. I sat in my car until sunrise. The next day, I called my friend Chris, who works for the county. He brought over some equipment and did a sweep of the house. "There's something weird going on with the wiring," he said. "Like an old landline running behind the closet wall." But my house didn't have a landline. We disconnected it years ago. He showed me a panel in the basement. It looked ancient. Covered in dust. Wires everywhere. "Someone patched something into your old phone line," he said. "But I don't know how. Or why." We pulled out the wires. All of them. Disconnected everything. That night, I slept better. No buzzing. No voices. But the next week, it started again. Buzz. Buzz. Click. Megan. This time, I didn't open the closet. I didn't respond. But every night since, it happens again. Always at 3 a.m. I've moved my bed to the other side of the house. I leave music playing while I sleep. Sometimes I hear his voice in the static, asking if I'm still there. Sometimes I answer. I miss him. I know I should move out. Burn the closet down. Tear out the walls. But some nights, I just sit there, listening to the buzz, to the voice, to whatever is trying to reach me. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. It was the first winter after my wife passed. My name is Jake. I work as a night dispatcher at the police station in a small town called Willow Creek. The town is quiet. Nothing big ever really happens here. Just deer crossing the road or teens throwing eggs on Halloween. After my wife died, I took the night shift. I couldn't sleep much at home. The silence was too loud. That night, the wind was cold. It howled through the cracks in the station windows. The old heater made clanking noises, and the light above my desk kept flickering. I had my coffee in the radio, like always. At around 2:13 a.m., I got a call. "Willow Creek Police," I said. At first, there was silence. Then, I heard something. Breathing. Very slow, like someone was hiding or scared. "Hello?" I asked again. A voice whispered, "He's inside the house." The line crackled. I straightened up in my chair. "Can you tell me your name?" No answer. I asked again. "Where are you calling from?" Then the call dropped. I looked at the screen. The call had come from a landline. That was odd. Most people use cell phones now. I tried calling back. No answer. I ran the number through our system. It was tied to a house on Pine Hollow Road. A farmhouse that had been empty for years. The owner was an old man named Frank Dillard. He passed away about 3 years ago. No one bought the house. It was still listed as abandoned. I radioed the patrol unit. Officer Megan was on duty that night. I asked her to drive by the address. She groaned but said she was heading that way. While I waited, I pulled up the house on Google Street View. The photo was blurry. But something about it felt wrong. The house had broken windows. The porch looked like it was about to fall over. In the photo, there was a black shape in the upstairs window. I zoomed in, but it got too grainy. The wind outside picked up again. A tree branch scraped the glass behind me. I flinched. 10 minutes passed. No word from Megan. I tried calling her radio. Static. Another 5 minutes. Still nothing. Then the phone rang again. I picked up. Willow Creek Police. It was the same voice. "He's at the top of the stairs now," the person whispered. "Who? Who is it?" I asked. No answer. "Are you hurt? Can you speak?" More breathing. Then the voice said something that made my skin crawl. "He's standing outside your window." I froze. Slowly, I turned to look. Nothing. Just the parking lot. Empty. The porch light swung in the wind. I grabbed the phone again. Is this a prank? But the line was already dead. I felt cold. Not from the weather, but from something else. Like the room had gotten darker. Then, Officer Megan's voice came through the radio, weak and scratchy. "Jake, don't send anyone else." "Megan? What happened?" There was a pause. Then she whispered, "It's not a house anymore. It breathes." The radio cut out again. I grabbed my keys. I wasn't supposed to leave the station, but I had to know if she was okay. The roads were foggy. Streetlights flickered like candles ready to go out. The drive to Pine Hollow took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. When I reached the house, her cruiser was parked outside. The door was open. The lights were still on. Her radio was sitting on the seat, buzzing faintly. I called out her name. No answer. The house looked worse up close. Boards were hanging loose. The front door was wide open. Inside, it smelled like wet wood and something old. I stepped inside. The floor creaked under me. "Officer Megan?" I called. Upstairs, I heard a door slam. I took out my flashlight and started walking up. Each step moaned under my feet. When I reached the top, all the doors were shut. Except one. The bedroom door. It creaked open slowly as I got closer. My hand was shaking. Inside was dust, broken furniture, and something else. The radio. My desk radio. It sat on the floor, and it was on. Static filled the room. I took a step forward. Then I heard breathing. Right behind me. I turned fast. Nothing. But when I looked back, the radio was off. I don't remember driving back. It's like my body moved on its own. The next morning, they found Megan's cruiser, but not her. No sign of her anywhere. My supervisor asked me what happened. I told them she never made it. I didn't mention the calls. Or the radio in that room. Since then, the station gets calls from that same number. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. No one ever answers when we call back. No one has seen Megan again. But sometimes, I still hear her voice on the radio. Very faint. Almost like she's trying to warn me. Sometimes, I wonder if I really left that house, or if part of me stayed behind. Before I begin, take a deep breath. What you're about to hear might stay with you the next time you're alone in your room at night. Here's the story. When I was about 12 years old, I had the only bedroom in our house that wasn't upstairs. We lived in a split-level home in a quiet town called Maple Hollow, where the front door opened to a landing with a few steps going up and a few steps going down. Upstairs was where my parents and two younger sisters slept. Downstairs had the den, the laundry room, the garage, and my room. Since I was the oldest and the only boy, my parents gave me that room. It was the biggest one in the house and gave me a little more space and privacy. I felt like I had scored big time. When I turned 10, they upgraded my bed from a twin to a full-size. The room was definitely big enough for it, and I loved it. My sisters were 5 and 8 back then, so sometimes I'd be left home alone, but only for a few hours. If my parents were going out for longer, they'd usually take the girls with them. I didn't mind being alone. At that age, I kind of liked it. But then there was this weird stretch, maybe 3 or 4 nights in a row, when I kept waking up in the middle of the night. Not from a nightmare. Just waking up, fully alert, with no reason at all. It was summer, and pretty hot out, so I kept a fan running by my bed. The white noise usually helped me sleep. But something kept pulling me out of it. One night, I got up to get a drink of water. I walked to the small bathroom just outside my room to fill up my glass. As the water ran, I thought I heard a soft noise behind me, coming from inside my bedroom. I turned the tap off. Silence. Just the hum of the fan. Nothing else. Still, something about the room felt wrong. I can't explain it. I stood in the doorway, staring into the dark. My bed, my desk, my posters, all where they should be. But I felt this unease. Like the air was heavier. I decided not to sleep there that night. I went upstairs and crashed on the living room couch. Eventually, I drifted off. But I woke up again. This time, I heard the fridge in the kitchen open. The soft hum of the light, the clink of bottles being moved around, someone rummaging inside. The kitchen was just around the corner, out of view from the couch. I figured it was one of my parents or maybe my older sister grabbing a snack. Then I heard the fridge door close and slow footsteps walking, not upstairs, but down. Back to the lower level. I was half asleep and didn't think much of it at the time. But the next day, something strange happened. My mom was folding laundry in my room when she suddenly called out, "This room stinks. You need to clean it up in here." I followed her in, sniffed the air, and honestly, I didn't smell anything. I shrugged it off. That night, Dad turned on the central air because it was just too hot. No fan this time, just the soft whoosh of air from the vents in the ceiling. After dinner and a family movie, we all went to our rooms. I played some video games before bed, then turned off the console and lay on my side to sleep like always. At some point in the night, I woke up again. The air vent had stopped blowing. The room was completely silent. Then I heard it. Breathing. But not mine. Slow. Deep. Coming from somewhere near the bed. I sat up slowly, my skin prickling. The closet was shut. The windows were locked. I glanced around, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was my sister playing a prank? I got on my hands and knees and checked under the bed. And that's when I saw him. A man. A large man. Curled up beneath my bed on a pile of blankets. His face turned toward me. Eyes closed. Breathing slow and steady. My body went cold. I fell backward onto the floor, scrambled back with my hands and feet, and screamed. Dad! Doors upstairs flew open. Feet pounded down the hallway. I pointed to my room, shaking, crying, barely able to get the words out. My dad rushed in, and seconds later, he pulled out a dirty, disheveled man from beneath my bed. He looked homeless. He didn't fight back. My dad dragged him outside while my mom was already on the phone with 911. The police came. I don't remember everything after that, just the red and blue lights outside, the officers asking questions, my mom trying to calm me down. I was in shock. No one knows how he got in. Maybe the garage was left unlocked. Maybe a window. But what scared me most was this: he had been under my bed for days. The smell my mom noticed, the late-night fridge noises, the way I kept waking up, he'd been living there, right beneath me, while I slept. We threw out everything in the fridge. We didn't know what he'd touched or eaten. My dad installed security cameras all over the house the next morning. For weeks after that, I couldn't sleep in my room. I stayed in my parents' bed, clutching a blanket, listening for any tiny sound. Even years later, I check under the bed every time I go to sleep, hotel rooms, sleepovers, anywhere. That fear never really left. To this day, I wonder, how long was he under there before I noticed? What if I hadn't looked? What if he hadn't been asleep? I still ask myself that sometimes when the night is too quiet. What do you think? Would you have checked under the bed? Or would you have just closed your eyes and hoped for the best?
I moved back to my hometown of Willow Creek after Dad passed. It's a small town in Ohio, quiet, where everyone waves, and the biggest event is the Fall Festival. I hadn't been back in years, but after the funeral, I couldn't bring myself to leave again. The silence helped with the anxiety. Or so I thought. Dad was the sheriff here. After Mom died, he stayed alone in our old house. It was big, creaky, and always cold. Even in summer, the hallways felt like early winter. I figured it was just bad insulation. Or maybe the place never stopped grieving with us. I took a job at the local post office to keep busy. The town was peaceful until that one letter came in. It was addressed in shaky handwriting, to the next of kin at 237 Lincoln Street. That was my house. But the return address wasn't normal. It just said, the Hollow Room. Upstairs. I stared at it for a while. I thought maybe it was an old prank. Dad used to mention weird stuff about the house after Mom passed, noises upstairs, cold spots, lights flickering. I always brushed it off as grief. That night, I walked up the stairs. The second floor had 3 rooms. Mine, the guest room, and the Hollow Room. That's what Dad called it. He never explained why. Just told me not to use it. The room had always felt wrong. Even as a kid, I avoided it. The door had a sticky feel, and the inside always smelled like dust and something sweet, like rotting flowers. I stood in front of the door with the letter in my hand. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sentence. He's still in here. That was it. No name. No explanation. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I turned the knob and stepped inside. The air was thick. The room was nearly empty, just an old chair by the window and a long mirror leaning against the wall. It wasn't broken, but the reflection looked slower, like it took a second to catch up. I stared at myself. My hands felt cold. The lights flickered once. Then the door creaked shut behind me on its own. I told myself it was just the wind. But there was no window open. I checked. The only sound was a slow creaking, like someone shifting in a chair. I turned around fast. The chair was empty. But the mirror, something had changed. My reflection wasn't sitting. But it looked tired. Pale. Behind it, I saw someone else. He was tall. Thin. Wearing Dad's old sheriff jacket. But the face was wrong. Blurry. No eyes. Just black. I blinked hard, and he was gone. I ran out and slammed the door. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing soft knocks upstairs. Always 3 knocks. Then silence. Then cold air. I tried to ignore it. Days went by. I kept seeing that same reflection in the mirror when I brushed my teeth. Always with someone behind me, just out of focus. One evening, after a storm knocked out the power, I lit some candles and sat in the living room. The town was quiet. No cars, no crickets. Just wind. Then I heard it again, 3 slow knocks. Only this time, they were on the living room window. I stood, heart pounding. I lived alone. The porch light was off. I couldn't see anything through the foggy glass. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. It said, "You opened the door." I didn't reply. The next morning, I asked the town clerk about the house. About anything strange. She was quiet at first. Then she said, "Your dad used to come and asking about the Lincoln records. That room scared him. He thought something was living there. He called it the Hollow Man." I asked if she believed him. She just said, "Your mom started hearing things too, before she passed." That night, I went back up to the hollow room. I didn't want to, but I felt like I had to know. I brought a flashlight and the letter. When I opened the door, it felt colder than ever. The mirror was gone. Just a blank wall where it once leaned. But in its place, was a shadow. Not mine. It moved, even when I didn't. I backed up. Then, I whispered, "Dad?" The shadow didn't speak. It just tilted its head. Then, behind me, I heard it. A deep breath. I ran out. I didn't stop until I was outside, under the flickering porch light. I've kept the door shut ever since. Nailed it shut. Painted over it. But I still hear those knocks. Always 3. Sometimes from the floor above. Sometimes, from the mirror in my hallway. I moved a dresser in front of it. But sometimes I swear, I hear breathing behind the glass. I don't know what's in that room. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's something older. But it's waiting. Would you ever go back inside? What do you think was in that mirror? Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way.
I live in a small town called Elk Hollow, tucked between 2 hills and a forest that always seems a little too dark, even during the day. My name is Greg, and I've worked as a night shift police officer here for over 10 years. It's a quiet place. People know each other. We rarely have any serious trouble, just the occasional speeding ticket or a call about a missing dog. Nothing ever really happens. But last fall, something did. And I haven't been able to forget it. It was the first week of October. The leaves had started to fall, and the cold wind carried that sharp smell of rain and old earth. Nights were getting longer, and fewer people were out past 8. I didn't mind. I liked the stillness. One night, around 2 a.m., I was parked near the old Garrison Road, where the forest thickens and the fog rolls in like smoke from a fire. It was quiet, like usual. I had my window slightly cracked, listening to the wind rustling through the trees. That's when my radio clicked on. It wasn't dispatch. It wasn't even a full transmission. It was just a voice. A soft one. A woman's. She said, "Can you see me now?" I stared at the radio. Static buzzed for a second, then silence. I picked it up. "Dispatch, was that you?" No response. "Dispatch, come in." Nothing. I switched frequencies. Still nothing. Everything else worked fine: lights, engine, heater. Just the radio. A chill ran through me. I got out and stretched, telling myself it was probably a glitch. Maybe some prank. Radios pick up weird stuff sometimes. That's what I told myself. I drove around for another hour, but my thoughts kept going back to that voice. "Can you see me now?" The next night, I drove the same route. It was even colder. The wind hissed through the cracks in the window. Fog sat low on the road. My radio was off, but I kept glancing at it. At 2:14 a.m., it clicked on again. Same voice. Same tone. But this time, she whispered, "I know you're watching." My hands clenched the wheel. I answered again. "Who is this?" No reply. I checked my mirrors. The fog was thicker. Streetlights looked like glowing orbs, barely piercing through it. I drove back to the station. Didn't say anything. I didn't want people to think I was losing it. I was tired. Maybe too tired. Grief does that to you, I guess. You see, my wife passed away 2 years ago. Car accident. She was everything to me. And since then, I haven't really been the same. I work. I sleep. I exist. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to believe that voice was hers. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Night 3, I almost stayed home. But I had a shift. I told myself I was imagining things. Just stress. Just grief. That night, I parked on Garrison Road again. Same spot. Same fog. This time, I left the radio on. 2:11 a.m. static. 2:13 a.m. soft breath. 2:14 a.m. the voice. But it wasn't a whisper this time. She screamed. It was so loud I dropped the radio and covered my ears. The sound crackled, sharp and piercing. It sounded like she was right behind me. When I looked up, I saw something in the rearview mirror. A shape. Sitting in the back seat. Not moving. Just there. My heart pounded. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I blinked, and it was gone. I drove straight back to the station and asked for the rest of the night off. I told my captain I wasn't feeling well. He didn't ask questions. The next day, I called a friend who used to work in the old records office. I asked if anything had ever happened near Garrison Road. He paused. "You mean that woman?" "What woman?" I asked. "There was a missing person case. Years ago. Maybe 1987? A woman's car was found off Garrison Road. Doors locked. Radio on. Engine still warm. She was never found." I didn't respond. I just ended the call. I didn't go back to Garrison Road for a while after that. But the dreams started. Each one began with fog. Then headlights. Then the voice. "Can you see me now?" Sometimes she was outside my window. Sometimes behind me in the dark. Sometimes her reflection looked just like my wife's. One night, I woke up to my home radio, turning on by itself. The dial flicked to static, and for a moment, I swear I heard her breathing. I pulled the batteries out that night. It's been almost a year. Sometimes, I think I should go back. Just to listen. Just to see if she's still there. Maybe she wants help. Maybe she's stuck. Or maybe she just wants to be heard. What do you think? Have you ever heard a voice when no one else was around? My name is Chris. I live in a quiet town called Willow Creek. Not much happens here. The streets are clean. The neighbors are polite. And nothing ever goes wrong. At least, that's what we all used to think. I work as a night security guard at the local water plant. The job is simple. I walk around, check locks, drink coffee, and wait for my shift to end. It gets boring sometimes, but boring is better than scary. It all started one cold October night. The air was crisp. Leaves crunched under my boots as I walked. I had just gone through my first round and sat in the little office near the back fence. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through pictures of my daughter. Her name is Lily. She's 5. I don't get to see her much. My wife and I are going through a hard time. We're not divorced, but we're not together either. I miss them. A lot. As I looked at her pictures, I felt this sudden chill. It wasn't just the wind. It was deeper, like something was watching me. I turned off my phone and stepped outside. The plant is near the edge of town, just before the woods. There's a narrow road that leads to a dead end. It's called Maple Lane. The trees grow tall and thick there. It's always darker on that road, even during the day. That night, I saw something at the end of it. At first, I thought it was a shadow. But it didn't move like a shadow. It stood still. Too still. A tall figure, right where the road ended and the trees began. I stared. It didn't move. I blinked. Still there. I walked back inside and locked the door. I told myself it was just a mailbox or a tree stump. Nothing to worry about. But when I looked out the window again, it was closer. Still not moving. Still just watching. I tried to go back to work, but my hands were shaking. I went to the monitor to check the security cameras. The screen showed all the usual views: fence, water tanks, storage, front gate. Except, one of the cameras was glitching. The one facing Maple Lane. It flickered every few seconds. Sometimes the screen was black. Sometimes it showed static. And once, just for a moment, it showed a clear image of the figure closer than before, standing just behind the outer gate. I got up fast. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside again. Nothing was there. The gate was closed. The road was empty. I walked to the edge and shined my light down Maple Lane. Trees. Leaves. Fog. But no figure. I took a deep breath and turned around. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Very soft. Very low. Chris. I froze. My name. It knew my name. I spun the flashlight in every direction. Nothing. I walked backward to the office, never taking my eyes off the road. Once inside, I locked every door. I turned off the lights and sat in the corner, breathing hard. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next evening, I almost didn't come in. But I needed the job. I needed the paycheck. I needed to be strong. The first few hours were quiet. But then, around 2 a.m., it happened again. The camera on Maple Lane glitched. Then it went black. Then came the whisper. "Let me in." It wasn't outside this time. It was inside. I stood up fast, grabbing the flashlight again. I checked the windows. The doors were still locked. Then I saw it. A tall shadow standing at the far end of the hallway, just beyond the red restricted area sign. It didn't move. Neither did I. I couldn't breathe. I blinked. Gone. The hallway was empty again. I ran to the office and called the sheriff. He came by, checked everything. Found nothing. He said maybe I was tired. Stressed. Imagining things. But I know what I saw. The next night was my last shift. I told myself I was going to ignore it. Just focus. Do the job. But around the same time, the cameras glitched again. This time, I didn't wait. I ran to the gate and locked it manually. Then I backed away. And there it was on the other side. Tall. Still. Watching me. I couldn't see its face. Just dark clothes. Long arms. A strange hum in the air around it. It didn't try to come in. It just stood there. Waiting. Then it turned. And walked away. Into the woods. I haven't seen it since. But sometimes, when I drive past Maple Lane, I feel that chill again. Like something is watching me from the trees. I left that job the next week. I'm trying to patch things up with my wife. Trying to be a better dad. But I think about that night a lot. Who or what was it? Why did it know my name? And what would have happened if I let it in? Have you ever seen something standing too still in the dark? What do you think it wanted? I live in a small town called Maple Hollow. You've probably never heard of it. It's quiet, cold most of the year, and everyone knows everyone. We have one diner, one gas station, and too many stories that no one likes to talk about. I moved back here after my mom passed. She left me the old house on Elmwood Street, the one with the creaky porch and the broken mailbox. I'd been away for years, living in the city, but when she died, something in me said it was time to come home. I was tired. Not just physically. Tired of noise. Tired of people. Tired of pretending to be okay. The house was just how I remembered it. Cold wood floors. The smell of dust and old books. I didn't change much. I wanted to feel close to her again, like she hadn't gone completely. The nights were the hardest. The wind would push through the cracks in the windows and make the whole place groan. Sometimes, it sounded like someone whispering. But I told myself it was just the wind. One night, I found Mom's old radio in the attic. It was a heavy, boxy thing with knobs that stuck. I dusted it off and plugged it in. To my surprise, it still worked. The soft static filled the room, oddly comforting. I turned the dial until I landed on a station playing slow, sad jazz. I let it play as I made tea and sat on the couch. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next evening, I turned the radio on again. Same soft jazz. Same calming feeling. I left it on while I read a book and tried not to think too much. Then I heard something strange. Right between the songs, before the static returned, there was a voice. A low, calm man's voice. He said my name. Just once, Emily. I froze. I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was part of an ad or a DJ's intro. But the station didn't have any ads. It was all music, all the time. I turned the dial. Just static. The next night, I tried again. I waited. The jazz played as usual, but then, there it was again. That same voice. Emily. Can you hear me? It wasn't loud. It wasn't threatening. It was almost sad. I turned the radio off. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I told myself I was just tired. Grief does strange things to your mind. You start hearing what you want to hear. I promised myself I'd throw the radio out. But I didn't. Instead, that night, I turned it back on. It was quiet at first. Just music. Then, slowly, the voice returned. Emily, don't be afraid. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the old radio, heart pounding. The voice sounded closer this time. Clearer. Do you remember the lake? It asked. That's when I dropped my cup. The lake. The one behind the woods. The one where, when I was 10, a boy named Jacob drowned. He was just 12. We were playing hide and seek. I was supposed to be the seeker. But I never found him. They searched for days. They found his shoe. Then his bike. But never him. Jacob? I whispered. The radio crackled. Yes. My legs felt weak. I sank to the floor, staring at the radio like it might come alive. I waited, the voice said. I thought you'd come back. Tears filled my eyes. I'm sorry, I said. I was a kid. I didn't know. I didn't think. You left me there. The voice wasn't angry. It was just hollow. That night, I didn't turn off the radio. I let it hum, even after the voice went quiet. In the morning, I walked to the lake. The air was cold. The sky was gray. The trees were bare. I stood at the edge of the water, remembering that day. The laughter. The silence. The guilt I'd buried for so long. I whispered a quiet apology, unsure who I was speaking to. When I returned home, the radio was still on. But the voice never came back. Days passed. Then weeks. I tried to tell myself it had all been a dream. A trick of the mind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something had spoken to me. Something still lived in that old signal. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind rattles the windows and the house groans, I think about turning the radio on again. Just to see if he's still there. Just to tell him I'm sorry again. But I never do. Instead, I sit in the quiet, holding my tea, listening to the wind whisper through the walls. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think I hear my name. People in Pine Hollow don't talk about Birch Hill after dark. But when I was a kid, we used to dare each other to go up there. It was a small town, the kind where everybody knew each other. We had a diner, one traffic light, and stories passed down like family recipes. One of those stories was about a light on Birch Hill. A lantern, glowing even when there was no one holding it. I didn't believe in that stuff, not really. But the year my dad died, everything started to feel different. I was 13, and nothing made sense anymore. My mom tried her best, but I could tell she was just holding herself together for me. We didn't talk much. I spent most of my time alone. One chilly October evening, the air smelled like wet leaves and wood smoke. I had been walking back from school and decided to take the long way home. Something about the cold helped clear my head. As I passed the bottom of Birch Hill, I saw it. A faint yellow glow. At first I thought it was someone's flashlight. But it was up high, swaying a little, like it was hanging from something or someone's hand. I stopped in my tracks. The sun was setting, and everything around me was quiet. No wind. No cars. No birds. Just that lantern. I stared for a long time. Then, it went out. Just like that. I told my friend Megan the next day. She said her cousin saw the same thing years ago and swore it followed him home. I laughed it off, but that night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made my heart race. I stayed up late scrolling through my phone, trying to find something, anything, about a lantern on Birch Hill. But there was nothing. Not online. Not in local archives. The next night, I went back. I know that sounds dumb, but I had to. I don't know if it was curiosity or something else. Maybe I wanted to see if it was real or if I was just losing it. I brought a flashlight. Wore a hoodie. Didn't tell anyone. As I climbed the path, the trees closed in. The higher I went, the colder it got. My flashlight flickered, and I felt something off. Like I was being watched. Then I saw it again. The lantern. Only this time, it wasn't far away. It was hanging from a tree branch, swaying gently. I stepped closer. It wasn't electric. It was an old-style oil lantern, rusted at the top, glass cracked. But the flame inside was steady. No wind. No smoke. No heat. I reached out, and the light went out. Everything turned dark. My flashlight died. The cold felt sharper, like it had teeth. I turned to run, but tripped on a tree root and hit the ground hard. Then I heard it. A voice. Soft. Whispering. So close it felt like it was inside my ear. Come back. I didn't look back. I ran all the way home, gasping, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would burst. When I got inside, my mom asked what happened. I wanted to tell her. I really did. But I just said I fell. She didn't push. She rarely did anymore. That night, I had a dream. I was standing on Birch Hill, but it wasn't cold. It was warm. Peaceful. My dad was there. He didn't speak. Just stood beside me, watching the light. When I woke up, I didn't feel scared. Just empty. I stayed away from the hill after that. 4 weeks. Months. Until one winter evening, I saw a post on our local Facebook group. Did anyone else see the light on Birch Hill last night? There were comments. Lots of them. Some joked, some swore they saw it too. One said they heard a voice whisper their name. I realized then it wasn't just me. Whatever was on that hill, it wasn't a prank. It wasn't a dream. It was real. I don't know if it's haunted. Or cursed. Or something older than any of us can understand. But I do know this, people in Pine Hollow don't go near Birch Hill after dark anymore. Even now, years later, I still live here. I've moved on, mostly. Got a job at the local gas station. Help my mom out. Try not to think about that night. But every so often, around October, someone new comes to town. They'll ask about Birch Hill. About the light. And all I can say is, don't go up there. If you see the lantern, walk away. Don't follow it. And if you hear it whisper to you, never answer back. Because I think that's what it wants. Not just for you to see it, but to speak to it. To listen. And once you do, it remembers. I live in a small town called Milford. We don't have much. Just one grocery store, a diner, and a fire station that doubles as a community center. People know each other here. We wave. We keep things quiet. My name is Chris. I used to be a cop. Now, I mostly fix up old cars and try to keep myself busy. My wife passed away 3 years ago. Since then, the house has been too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the walls feel heavy. It was late October. The wind had started picking up. Leaves covered the road like a rusty carpet. Halloween was just a week away, but the town didn't really decorate like it used to. Not since the bad fire 5 years back. Took out a whole block. Some people left after that. Anyway, this story isn't about the fire. It's about something else. Something that started with a porch light. See, every house on my street has those little sensor porch lights. They flick on when someone walks by. Mine has always worked fine. But one night, I woke up around 2:15 a.m. and saw it was on. I figured it was a raccoon or a deer. Common around here. I walked to the window. Looked outside. Nothing. Went back to bed. Next night, same thing. Light on at 2:17 a.m. Weird. I checked the camera I had above the door. Just static. Which was strange because it had been working 2 days ago when the mailman dropped off a package. I tried restarting it. No luck. That's when I noticed something else. There was a smell. Like something burnt. Like metal or wires. The third night, I stayed up. Sat in the living room with the lights off. I didn't want to scare off whatever was tripping the light. At 2:18, it flicked on again. I stood slowly. Went to the window. This time, there was someone standing on the porch. Not moving. Just standing. It was a man. Tall. He had long hair. Looked soaked, even though it hadn't rained. He was facing the door. His back to me. I couldn't see his face. I watched for 5 minutes. He didn't move. I called out through the glass. Hey! You okay? He didn't turn. Didn't answer. I opened the front door just a little. Sir? You need help? He turned his head slightly. That's when I saw his ear. Or, what was left of it. Looked like it had been burned. Blackened. I closed the door. Locked it fast. I called the sheriff's department. They said someone would drive by. But when they came 20 minutes later, the man was gone. Just a wet boot print on the welcome mat. I didn't sleep much after that. Next day, I asked around the neighborhood. No one had seen anything. No one else had lights going off. Just mine. I checked the security footage again. Still static. I decided to replace the camera. That night, I stayed up again. This time with the new camera watching. Same thing. 2:19 a.m. Light on. I ran to the monitor. Static again. I looked through the window. No one there. But the porch smelled like something had just burned. I walked out, holding my old flashlight. There were boot prints again. Only this time, they weren't just on the mat. They trailed off into the yard. I followed them a little. But they just stopped. Vanished into the grass. That's when I noticed the streetlight across the road flickering. Then, it went dark. Then the next one. Then the next. And it got quiet. Too quiet. No wind. No crickets. Dead silence. I turned around and headed back to the porch fast. When I got inside and locked the door, I swear, I heard the screen door creak open. But no one was there. I checked every lock. Every window. Slept in the basement that night, door bolted. Next day, I took the camera to the shop. Had a friend plug it into their laptop. The footage wasn't gone. It was scrambled. Just lines and blur. But there was one frame, just one, that looked like a face. Pale. Burned. Staring right into the lens. We zoomed in. His eyes weren't right. Like they were glowing. I felt sick. My friend said, "This is messed up, Chris. Whatever this is, it doesn't want to be seen." That night, I didn't stay up. I couldn't. I just lay in bed and waited. 2:20 a.m. Porch light on. Then off. Then on again. I didn't look. Didn't want to. I covered my head and waited for morning. It's been 3 weeks. It still happens. Every night. Same time. Sometimes I hear footsteps on the porch. Sometimes whispers. One night I heard the smoke detector beep, but there was no smoke. I replaced the batteries. Next night, it went off again. And every morning, those boot prints are there. They vanish with the morning sun. I stopped calling the police. What could I tell them? Last week, a neighbor moved out. Said they saw a man in the woods behind our street. Just watching. I still live here. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just tired of running from things I can't explain. Or maybe I feel like I'm the one who's supposed to see him. Maybe I always was. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I live in a small town called Maple Hollow. It's the kind of place where people don't lock their doors. Or at least, they didn't. My name's Jake. I used to work as a night security officer for the old Maple Hollow Community Hospital. It was shut down in 1998 after they built a newer facility in town. The building still stands on the edge of the woods, close to where the old cemetery begins. It's been empty for over 20 years. Mostly. When I took the job, I was dealing with a lot. My wife had passed away the year before. I couldn't sleep much anymore, so I figured working nights would help. The job was simple: walk the halls a few times each shift, make sure no teens were sneaking in to party or break stuff, and report anything unusual. I didn't expect anything unusual to actually happen. The hospital had this quiet chill, even in summer. The walls were still white, but faded and cracked in places. The linoleum floors echoed your steps like the sound wanted to run away from you. Every night, I'd hear small sounds, pipes creaking, a door swinging lightly, but nothing too strange. Until one night in October. That's when I first saw the light in room 6. Room 6 was on the east wing, near the pediatric unit. It was a single patient room, nothing fancy. No working electricity anymore. But that night, as I did my usual round just before midnight, I saw a soft yellow light coming through the narrow window in its door. Not flickering like a candle. Steady. Warm. I stopped. My first thought? A squatter. Maybe some kid had snuck in with a flashlight or lantern. I knocked gently and said, "Hey, building's closed. You can't be in here." No response. I pushed the door open. The room was empty. Cold. Dark. No lamp. No flashlight. No wires. Just dust and the old metal bed frame. I walked in, just to be sure. The moment I stepped across the doorway, my flashlight flickered and went out. I stood there in silence. I could feel the air change, like it had gone heavy somehow. Like the room was holding its breath. Then, faintly, I heard humming. A soft, slow tune. Like a lullaby. I turned and left that room as fast as I could. Back at the desk, I tried to convince myself I was tired. Maybe I'd imagined it. But the next night, same thing. The light in room 6. The humming. The dead flashlight. I stopped going near that room. A week later, I got curious. I looked through the old hospital logs. Room assignments, patient records, anything I could find. Room 6 had been used for pediatric overflow in the late 90s. Kids with nowhere else to go. The last patient listed was a girl named Emily Grant. 7 years old. She had died in her sleep. No visitors. No next of kin listed. Her file had been closed with a single sentence: patient expired during night shift. No further action required. It made my stomach turn. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I brought flowers. One of those small fake ones from the dollar store. I went to room 6. I left them just inside the doorway and said, "I'm sorry you were alone." For the next few nights, the room stayed dark. Quiet. I started sleeping again. For a little while, I even felt peaceful. But last week, I came in for my shift and noticed something odd. The security monitors had short bursts of static, just for a second, and then cleared up. I went through the halls like normal, everything fine, until I passed room 6 again. The door was open. Inside, I saw the flowers I'd left. They were now lying neatly on the pillow. Arranged with care. Next to them was a small, old-fashioned doll. It hadn't been there before. I picked it up. Porcelain face. Cracked down the side. One eye stuck halfway shut. And as I held it in my hand, the overhead light above me flickered once. Then all the hallway lights went dark. Complete silence. And then the lullaby started again. But this time, it was louder. I dropped the doll. Ran. Made it back to the front desk and grabbed my keys. I waited in my car until morning. I haven't gone back since. They say the hospital will finally be torn down next year. Some developer wants to build condos there. Let them. Let the walls come down. But I can't help thinking about room 6. I still dream about it sometimes. The soft yellow light. The cold air. The humming. Sometimes. I think I hear it outside my window. I grew up in a quiet place called Pine Hollow. It's one of those small towns where everyone knows each other, and people wave when they pass you on the street. Life moves slow there. Calm. Peaceful. But there was one road folks didn't like to talk about. Delaney Hill. It sat just outside town. A steep road covered in broken leaves and fog most mornings. At the top, hidden behind old trees, stood a crumbling house that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Paint peeling, windows boarded, porch sagging like it was tired of holding on. They said it used to belong to a woman named Ruth Delaney. Lived alone. Went missing one winter night after calling 911 and whispering, "He's in the house." No one found her. No signs of a break-in. Her phone was still on the kitchen counter. Since then, no one moved in. The house just stood there. Watching. I hadn't thought about it in years until my job brought me back. I became a deputy sheriff. After my divorce, I moved back to Pine Hollow. Needed a fresh start. I was struggling with insomnia and kept my radio on most nights. One October evening, a storm rolled in. Cold winds howled through town, shaking street signs and throwing leaves across the road. I was on patrol when dispatch called in. Unit 3, we got a noise complaint. 221 Delaney Hill. I blinked. You sure about that address? Caller didn't give a name. Just said, it's back. Then the line cut off. I pulled my cruiser around and headed up Delaney Hill. The road was slick with rain, and fog made it hard to see. My headlights caught glimpses of broken tree branches, puddles, and the occasional stray cat. When I reached the house, I killed the engine. Silence fell. Not even crickets. Just the soft ticking of rain on my windshield. The porch light was on. That shouldn't have been possible. The house had no power. I stepped out slowly, hand on my flashlight, and walked toward the door. Each step made the old boards creak louder than they should have. The front door was cracked open. I pushed it gently and stepped inside. The air smelled like mildew and old wood. My boots sank slightly into the soft, rotting floorboards. The light came from an oil lamp sitting on a side table in the living room. It flickered even though there was no wind inside. Sheriff's Department, I called out. Anyone here? Silence. I took a few steps further. My flashlight flicked for a moment. Static hissed in my radio. Then I heard it. A whisper. Faint. Almost like it came from inside the walls. I froze. Don't let him in. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing. No one behind me. The voice had sounded like a woman's. Weak. Tired. I moved through the house slowly. The kitchen was covered in dust, but one chair had been pulled out. The same old rotary phone still sat there, but it was off the hook. I climbed the stairs, one hand on the rail, the other gripping my flashlight tight. At the top, the hallway stretched into darkness. Doors lined both sides. I pushed one open and shined the light inside. A child's bedroom. Dusty toys sat in a corner. A broken crib leaned against the wall. On the far wall, words had been scratched into the paint. He waits in the mirror. My stomach twisted. I backed away. As I turned, I saw movement. Just a flicker in the hallway mirror. I turned my light, but there was nothing there. Just my own reflection. My tired face. The deep circles under my eyes. Then it smiled. But I didn't. I stumbled back. The figure in the mirror stepped forward. Its eyes were empty. Its mouth stretched too wide. I looked away and ran down the stairs. The air had changed. Thicker. Harder to breathe. I could hear something behind me, footsteps that didn't match mine. Slower. Heavier. I reached the front door, but it slammed shut before I could touch it. I pulled and yanked, but it wouldn't move. Then the whisper came again, right by my ear. He feeds on regret. I closed my eyes and said a prayer. I wasn't a religious man, but in that moment, I needed something, anything. The footsteps stopped. When I opened my eyes, the door was open. The storm had stopped. I ran to my cruiser, started the engine, and didn't look back until I was halfway down the hill. The next morning, I returned with another officer. The house was cold, dark, and empty. The lamp was gone. The writing on the wall wasn't there. The mirror? Shattered. Just dust and broken glass. No record showed any calls made that night. No sign of trespassers. No power to the house. And yet I know what I saw. I know what I heard. They say Delaney Hill feeds off pain. Regret. Grief. Maybe that's why it chose me. Maybe it knew I carried too much of it. Sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I'd stayed in that hallway just a second longer? Would the mirror have opened? I don't go near that road anymore. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I still hear her whisper, "Don't let him in." My name is Officer Daniel Brooks. I've been with the Pine Hollow Police Department for 12 years. It's a small town. Peaceful. The kind of place where most calls are about lost dogs or noise complaints. Nothing serious. At least, not until the night I responded to a 911 call from the old Lambert house. It was early November. The kind of night where the wind cuts through your jacket, and fallen leaves scrape along the pavement. The air smelled like wet bark and smoke from nearby chimneys. I was on my usual patrol when dispatch called in. A woman's voice had whispered into the phone, "There's someone in the house, but I live alone." Then silence. The Lambert house was on the edge of town, past the woods. Everyone knew it. Abandoned for years. No one had lived there since 2003 when the last owner passed. Kids used to dare each other to knock on the door at night. But this sounded real. I pulled up to the house just after midnight. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. The place looked dead, like always. But something felt off. The front door was slightly open, swaying with the wind. I radioed in and stepped out of the cruiser. Gravel crunched under my boots. The wooden porch creaked as I climbed the steps. I knocked once. "Ma'am, this is Officer Brooks. You called 911? No answer. I pushed the door open. It groaned loudly. Inside, the air was stale, like something had been trapped in there too long. The house was cold. Dust floated through the beam of my flashlight. I could hear the soft ticking of an old clock somewhere inside. I called out again. Still nothing. The living room was empty, just an old couch covered in a sheet and a cracked mirror on the wall. I moved slowly, checking each room. Kitchen. Empty. Dining room. Empty. Then I heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Soft. Bare. Moving slowly above me. I froze, staring at the ceiling. Then I called out, "Ma'am, stay where you are. I'm coming up." I climbed the staircase, every step creaking. At the top, the hallway stretched left and right. My light caught a door at the end. It was cracked open. I moved toward it, heart pounding. Inside was a bedroom. Mostly bare, except for a rocking chair in the corner. And in that chair, a woman sat. She looked about 40. Pale skin. Short dark hair. Wearing a faded sweater. She stared at the floor, rocking gently. "Ma'am?" I said, stepping closer. "Are you all right? Did you call 911? She looked up at me, slowly. Her eyes were distant. Hollow. "I didn't call," she whispered. "Are you sure? Someone used this address. Are you alone?" She nodded. "Always." I glanced around the room. There was no phone. No lights. Just the chair and her. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. "He's back. Upstairs." I paused. "Who's upstairs?" She didn't answer. Just stared. I turned back to the hallway. There was no more upstairs. This was it. I stepped back, uneasy. Okay. I'm going to radio for backup. But when I looked back at her, the chair was empty. I shined my light around the room. She was gone. The rocking chair was still moving. No sign of her. No sound. I backed into the hallway. The walls seemed tighter now. The air heavier. Suddenly, the lights in the hallway flickered on. I hadn't touched a switch. Then I heard it again, footsteps. Not upstairs. This time, coming down the hallway, toward me. I spun around, but the hall was empty. The footsteps kept coming. Right up to me. Then stopped. I held my breath, scanning the space in front of me. There was no one there. But I could feel it, something was right in front of me. Cold air brushed against my face. I stepped backward, my radio crackling. "Officer Brooks, do you copy?" I raised it to my mouth, whispering, "I'm at the Lambert house. I need backup. Something's not right." Then, a voice behind me whispered in my ear. "Too late." I turned fast. Nothing. I ran down the stairs and straight out the front door. The night felt colder. My breath came out in clouds. When backup arrived, I was already outside, hands on my knees, trying to calm down. Another officer, Megan from my shift, looked at me like I'd seen a ghost. "I don't know what's in that house," I told her. But someone or something was in there. We both searched it again, top to bottom. Every room. No woman. No signs of anyone ever being there. The rocking chair was gone. No prints. No dust disturbed. Just that same old silence. We checked the 911 records later. The call had come from a landline, one disconnected over a decade ago. The woman I saw? She matched the description of Emily Lambert, the original owner's sister. She disappeared in that house in 2002. Her body was never found. I still patrol Pine Hollow. I still answer calls. But I never go back to that house. And I never answer calls with no voice on the line. My name is Ben. I'm 42 years old, divorced, and living alone in a small town called Millersville, Colorado. It's the kind of town where everyone knows each other. Quiet streets, big skies, and old houses passed down through families. I work at the sheriff's office, mostly answering calls about lost pets or noise complaints. Nothing big ever really happens here. After the divorce, I moved into an old rental house at the edge of town. It sat close to the woods, near a creek. The owner told me it was built in the 1950s. It had creaky floors, a crooked mailbox, and a small porch that looked like it hadn't been swept in years. Still, the rent was cheap, and I needed space to think. It was autumn when I moved in. The wind was cold, and the leaves fell like rain. I liked sitting on the porch after work, sipping coffee, watching the fog roll down the hill. It felt peaceful. But the peace didn't last long. About a week after settling in, I noticed something strange. Every night at exactly 11:17 p.m., the hallway light would flicker. Just once. Like a pulse. Then it would stop. I thought it was faulty wiring. I told the landlord, but he just shrugged and said, "Old houses do weird things." I didn't push it. Then one night, I heard footsteps upstairs. That was strange because I lived alone. At first, I thought it was the house settling, but these weren't random creaks. These were slow, steady steps, moving across the floor above my head. I froze. My hands were still on my coffee mug. I didn't move for a full minute. Then, nothing. Silence. I walked upstairs, holding a flashlight, heart beating fast. I checked every room. No one. Nothing. Still, the air felt colder up there. Like the house was holding its breath. A few days later, the front door swung open on its own. I had locked it. I remember clearly: click, twist, shut. But there it was, wide open. Cold wind blew in, and the leaves outside danced on the porch like they were trying to come inside. I closed the door. Locked it again. Told myself I was being paranoid. But the weirdest thing happened the following week. I found something in the attic. I only went up there because I kept hearing what sounded like whispers above the bedroom. I thought maybe animals had gotten in. The attic stairs were old and narrow. When I pulled down the ladder, dust fell everywhere. Inside, there wasn't much. Just old furniture covered with sheets, a broken rocking chair, and a box full of black and white photos. I picked one up. It was a woman. She looked sad. Her eyes stared straight at the camera. Her dress was old-fashioned, like from the 1940s. Behind her, in the shadow, there was a shape. I could barely make it out. It looked like a tall, thin figure with no face. I blinked. Looked again. It was gone. I set the photo down and left the attic. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in the hallway. The light flickered, just like it always did. But this time, I saw someone at the end of the hall. A woman. Her face pale, her eyes dark. She didn't speak. She just pointed to the attic door. I woke up sweating. I didn't sleep well after that. Things got worse. My phone started ringing at random times, but no one was there. Just static. One night, I came home to find all the lights in the house on. I always turned them off before leaving. Then I saw writing on the mirror in the bathroom. It said, "Still here." I left the house that night and stayed at a friend's place. I called a local historian the next day. I told him about the house. He got quiet for a moment, then said, "That house? Willow Creek Road? A woman named Margaret lived there in the 40s. Her husband was a soldier. He never came home. People say she lost her mind waiting for him. She locked herself in the attic and, well, never came out. They found her weeks later. She had scratched the walls with her nails. I didn't know what to say. He ended the call with, "Some people say her spirit never left. That she's still waiting." I moved out the next morning. I couldn't stay there. Not with the footsteps, the dreams, the shadows. It's been 6 months now. I live in a small apartment downtown. No woods. No creaky floors. I still dream of the hallway sometimes. The flickering light. The pale woman. Last night, my hallway light flickered. Once. At exactly 11:17 p.m. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. I moved to Maple Glen after my divorce. It's a quiet little town in Oregon. Pine trees line the streets, and the air smells like wet earth and firewood. I rented a small cottage on the edge of town. It looked old but peaceful, just what I needed to clear my head. The first few weeks were calm. I took walks, drank too much coffee, and tried to keep my mind from going back to her. Nights were the hardest. The house creaked a lot. The wind whispered through the cracks in the windows. Sometimes, it felt like someone was outside, watching. One morning, I found something odd in the attic. It was a dusty old radio. The kind with knobs and an antenna. It looked like it hadn't worked in decades. I brought it downstairs and set it on the kitchen counter, thinking it might be cool to restore. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled outside, and the trees scratched against the roof. Around midnight, I heard a low crackling sound. At first, I thought it was the heater. But when I walked into the kitchen, I saw the radio light was on. It was playing a faint voice. Static mixed with soft whispers. I leaned in. "Are you there?" The voice was thin. Almost childlike. I turned the knob, but there was no station. No numbers. Just that voice. "Can you hear me?" I unplugged the radio. The light went out. The sound stopped. My hands were cold. My heart pounded. I left the kitchen and tried to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just an old battery or maybe my mind playing tricks. But that night, the radio turned itself back on. I didn't even plug it in. The same voice, clearer now. "Why did you leave me?" I froze. My name wasn't spoken, but somehow, it still felt personal. I packed the radio in a box and left it in the garage. I didn't want to throw it away, it felt wrong, like I was breaking something important. I tried to go back to normal. But the air in the house felt heavier. I started having dreams. Always the same. I was standing in a room full of radios. They all buzzed. They all whispered. And they all asked the same thing. "Why did you leave me?" One night, I stayed up and searched online. I found a few threads. Other people in Oregon towns had heard about the voice on the static. Some said it came from an old signal that couldn't be traced. Others believed it was the voice of someone who died alone, trying to connect. I didn't want to believe any of it. But part of me did. The final night it happened, I had just come home from a late shift at the local hardware store. I walked into the kitchen, and the box I had put the radio in was open. It was back on the counter. Plugged in. Lit up. I stared at it. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then the voice came again. "Come outside." The light in the kitchen flickered. The wind picked up. I walked to the back door and looked out. The trees swayed, and the moon lit up the yard. Then I saw something. A small figure. Standing still. Watching me from the edge of the woods. My legs locked. My throat dried up. I blinked and it was gone. I slammed the door, ran to the garage, grabbed the radio, and drove to the river. I threw it in, watched it sink into the cold, black water. I stood there for a long time, hoping that was the end of it. It wasn't. Now, sometimes, the TV turns on by itself. Sometimes I hear static in my car radio, just for a second, followed by a whisper I almost recognize. I still live in Maple Glen. I'm doing better, mostly. I don't talk about what happened. People here already think I'm a little off. But when the wind blows and the nights get cold, I hear it again. Just barely. "Why did you leave me?" Chris was a part-time 911 dispatcher in the small town of Ashwood, just outside the Adirondacks. He had moved there to escape the noise of the city, hoping to recover after his mom passed away last fall. The grief still sat heavy in his chest. Ashwood was quiet. Nothing much happened, occasional raccoon complaints, the odd power outage during storms, or kids pulling Halloween pranks. Chris liked the silence, mostly. But it was the kind of silence that sometimes felt too quiet. It was early November. The leaves had fallen, leaving the trees like skeletons, and the wind had that sharp bite of early winter. On this night, the dispatch center was unusually still. It was just Chris and the hum of the overhead lights. The clock on the wall ticked past 1:12 a.m. when the phone rang. He picked it up. 911, what's your emergency? The line crackled. Then, a faint voice. Help, she's in the walls. Chris sat up straight. Can you tell me your name? Static. Then a whisper. I can't get out. She won't let me. Where are you calling from? No response. Hello? Can you tell me your address? Finally, a whisper. Ashwood Lane, number 17. Chris's blood ran cold. That house, number 17, was abandoned. It had been for years. Everyone in town knew the stories. A woman named Margaret Clay used to live there. Local legend said she went mad after her daughter disappeared and was never found. Some say Margaret used to talk to the walls. Others said she never left the house, even after she died. Chris called the sheriff, but he was out covering a deer strike on the highway. Backup was an hour out. Against his better judgment, Chris grabbed his flashlight, signed out, and drove the short 5 minutes down foggy, cracked roads toward Ashwood Lane. The air outside smelled like damp leaves and something faintly metallic. As he pulled up, the wind howled through broken trees, and the porch light of number 17 flickered like it was trying to breathe. He stepped out. Gravel crunched under his boots. The house stood dark and quiet, 2 stories tall, old wooden siding peeling like sunburned skin. One shutter was loose, creaking in the wind. Chris walked up the porch stairs. The wood groaned beneath him. He knocked once. Nothing. Then, he tried the doorknob. It turned with a soft click. Inside, the air was cold and stale, thick with the smell of mold and dust. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, catching old furniture covered in sheets and wallpaper curling from the walls like dried leaves. Hello, he called out. This is emergency services. Is anyone here? A loud bang came from upstairs. Chris flinched. If you're hurt, call out. No response. He climbed the stairs slowly, every step crying out beneath his feet. As he reached the top, he heard something that made his skin crawl. A woman whispering from behind the walls. His light scanned the hallway. One of the doors was slightly open. He pushed it slowly. It was a child's bedroom. Old stuffed animals sat in a pile. A dusty pink blanket lay crumpled on a bed. A hand-drawn picture was taped to the wall, 2 stick figures, one taller than the other. Me and Mommy was written in faded crayon. The whisper came again. She watches through the cracks. Chris turned toward the sound. The wall next to the closet had a strange outline, a square panel barely visible behind the wallpaper. He walked closer. A chill passed through him. He pressed his ear against the wall. Scratching. Slow. Deliberate. From the other side. Chris stepped back, heart pounding. He wasn't sure if it was fear or grief or something else, but suddenly he felt watched. Like something in the house knew he was there. Suddenly, a loud click behind him. The door slammed shut. He turned, grabbing the knob. Locked. Hello, he shouted. Is someone there? The whispering grew louder. It filled the room, rising like wind through dead branches. Then, clear as day, a voice spoke. You shouldn't have come. The lights, what little worked, flickered violently. Chris backed into the corner, breathing hard. Then silence. No wind. No whispers. Only the sound of something moving behind the walls, slowly getting closer. Chris dropped his flashlight. It hit the floor and went out. He stood in complete darkness. Then light. Morning light. He was lying on the floor. The door was open. The house was quiet. Chris scrambled out, ran to his car, and never looked back. When the sheriff finally arrived and went through the place, they found nothing. No voice on the dispatch recordings. No sign of forced entry. No panel on the wall. Chris quit the job 2 days later. He never told anyone exactly what happened in number 17. But every now and then, he dreams about that voice. The scratching. The girl whispering. She's in the walls. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Everyone in Briar Hollow knew the sound of the old payphone at the edge of town. It was on an empty road, next to the woods, near the old gas station that shut down years ago. The booth still stood there, dusty, glass-cracked, phone dangling by a metal cord. No one used it anymore. Not since cell phones became common. But people said it still rang sometimes. Usually in the middle of the night. Jake, a young officer with the Briar Hollow Police Department, never believed in stories like that. He had more important things on his mind. His mom had passed away a few months back. He'd been the one to find her. Ever since then, sleep had become a stranger to him. One chilly October night, around 2 a.m., Jake was driving the patrol car through the far end of town. The air was thick with fog, and the roads were slick with fallen leaves. The radio was quiet. Then the dispatcher's voice crackled through. "Unit 7, we just got a report. Someone says the old payphone's ringing again. Can you check it out?" Jake sighed. He thought it was probably a prank. Teenagers. But it was a slow night, so he turned onto the road leading into the woods. The streetlights here flickered, and most of the houses were dark. As Jake neared the booth, the fog grew heavier. It seemed to press against the windows. Then he heard it. Re-eyeing. Re-eyeing. The payphone was ringing. He stopped the car, stepped out, and walked toward it. His boots crunched on the gravel. The booth looked worse than he remembered, covered in vines, the glass fogged up from inside. He opened the door slowly. Re-eyeing. He stared at the phone for a second, then picked it up. "Hello?" There was silence. Then, a voice. Soft. Familiar. "Jake, why didn't you come home?" Jake's heart stopped. That voice, it sounded like his mom. He stepped back, eyes wide. "Who is this?" he asked, trying to stay calm. "It's cold, Jake. So cold down here. I called and called." His hand trembled. He hung up fast and backed away. The phone didn't ring again. Not that night. He didn't tell anyone. He just said there was no one there. But the next night, it rang again. And the next. Each time, the voice said more. "There's something in the dark with me. Why won't you come back? He said you forgot me." Jake tried tracing the calls, but the system said there was no signal. No number. Just static. The calls started affecting him. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. His co-workers noticed, but he said it was just the grief. He started visiting the booth more often. Sometimes, the voice would cry. Other times, it would whisper secrets only his mother could have known. One night, he asked, "Where are you?" She replied, "Downstairs. Where the light doesn't reach." That night, he went home and opened the basement door. It had always creeped him out as a kid. It smelled like dust and old wood. He turned on the light. Nothing. But then, he saw it. A shadow, just at the edge of the light, in the far corner of the basement. He froze. It didn't move. He stepped forward. Slowly. Heart racing. The closer he got, the colder the air became. The bulb above flickered. He reached out toward the shadow. Suddenly, it shifted just slightly. Like it breathed. Jake turned and ran up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind him. He didn't go to the booth the next night. Or the one after that. But the calls didn't stop. Now, they came to his phone. Private number. Same voice. You left me in the dark. He said you belong here too. Jake smashed his phone. Got a new number. Still, the calls came. He finally told the station he needed time off. They understood. But the calls didn't care. On Halloween night, Jake drove out to the booth one last time. The fog was thick. The moon hidden behind clouds. The booth was already ringing. Re-eyeing. Re-eyeing. He stepped inside. Picked up the phone. I'm here, he said quietly. The voice didn't sound like his mother anymore. It was lower, deeper. Good, it said. Now we can begin. That was the last time anyone saw Jake. His car was found near the booth, door open, engine off. His phone was on the seat. But the payphone? It still rings. Some say if you answer it, you hear a woman crying. Others say it's Jake's voice now, calling for help from wherever he went. But no one picks up anymore. Not in Briar Hollow. Would you? My name is Jake. I grew up in a small town called Pine Hollow, where nothing ever really happened. It was quiet, safe, almost too quiet sometimes. After my divorce last year, I moved back into my childhood home on Willow Street. It had been empty since my mom passed. She used to love Halloween. The whole street would light up with jack-o'-lanterns and decorations. But now, most of the houses were dark. A lot of the neighbors had either moved away or passed on. It was early October. The nights had started getting cold. You could hear the leaves scraping along the sidewalk. The wind always made the house creak. Still, I liked the peace. I was trying to rebuild my life, piece by piece. One evening, I came home from my late shift at the sheriff's office. I'm just a desk officer now, doing reports and radio calls. It's not exciting, but it helps keep me distracted. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd. The porch light across the street was on. That house had been empty for over a year. Old Mrs. Dawson used to live there, but she passed away last winter. I figured maybe someone had bought the house. I stood there for a moment, watching the soft yellow glow from her porch. There was no car out front. No moving van. Just that lonely light in the dark. I went inside, made a sandwich, and sat in the living room scrolling through my phone. I tried not to think about the empty house. But the longer I sat, the more I felt unsettled. That night, I had a dream. I was walking down Willow Street, only the lights were flickering. The sky was a weird purple-gray, and the streetlights kept blinking out one by one behind me. I turned and saw a tall figure, all shadow, just standing under Mrs. Dawson's porch light. Watching me. I woke up sweating. The next night, the porch light was on again. Still no signs of life in the house. I stood at my window and watched. For almost an hour. Nothing moved. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing just behind the curtain in the window. Just out of sight. 2 days later, I decided to check it out. I crossed the street around sunset. The air smelled like damp leaves. The wood steps creaked under my boots. I knocked once. No answer. I turned the doorknob. It was locked. But just as I turned to leave, I heard a soft click. The door creaked open. "Hello?" I called out. No response. I stepped inside. The house smelled musty, like dust and old wood. But beneath that, something else. Something like burnt plastic. I moved through the living room slowly. The furniture was still covered in white sheets. Nothing looked touched. The air felt heavy, like it hadn't been moved in years. And then, the hallway light flicked on by itself. I spun around. No one there. I walked toward the hallway, heart pounding. That's when I heard it. The low hum of static. Like a TV left on in the other room. I followed the sound to the back of the house. Mrs. Dawson's old den. The TV was on, just showing static. Black and white fuzz dancing across the screen. I remember that TV. She used to watch the news on it every night. But that TV hadn't worked in years. I reached to turn it off, but just before I touched the dial, the screen flickered. For a second, I saw a face. Pale. Eyes wide open. Mouth stretched too far. Then the screen went black. I turned and left. Back home, I sat in my chair, staring at my wall. I didn't tell anyone at work. Who would believe me? That night, I dreamed again. Same figure. Same porch. But this time, I heard my name. Whispered. Over and over. Jake. Jake. I woke up to a knock on my front door. 2:13 a.m. I looked through the peephole. No one there. But when I stepped outside, her porch light was off. The next day, I went to the county records office. There was no sale recorded for the house. No inspection. No utility changes. It was still listed as abandoned. The light kept turning on every night. Always at 7:13 p.m. Always off by morning. I finally installed a camera pointing at the house. The footage played fine until exactly 7:13 p.m. Then it glitched. Every single time. Static. Blackouts. When it came back, the light was already on. 3 days ago, something changed. At 7:13 p.m., the light came on. But this time, my porch light flickered too. I ran outside. Looked across the street. And there it was again. The shadow figure. Standing in the hallway window. Staring straight at me. Only now, it wasn't just watching. It raised its hand. And waved. I haven't gone outside since. I've shut all my curtains. I unplugged the TV. I don't answer the door after dark. But last night, when I got up to use the bathroom, my hallway light turned on by itself. And I swear, just for a second, I saw a face in the mirror that wasn't mine. Ryan wasn't just a cop. He was also a single dad. His wife had passed away 2 years ago. Car crash. Since then, it had just been him and his little girl, Emma. He tried his best, but there were days when the silence at home felt too heavy. Willow Creek was small. Quiet. The kind of town where everyone waved at each other, and strange things rarely happened. That's why Ryan took the night shift. It gave him space to think. Time to clear his head. One Thursday evening, near Halloween, Ryan got a call from dispatch. Strange noise complaint. Old Lambert Place, up on Maple Hollow. He blinked. That house had been empty for years. No one had lived there since the Lamberts moved out after their son went missing. People in town whispered about that house. Said it was cursed. Ryan didn't believe in that stuff. He believed in facts. But still, as he pulled up the gravel driveway, something in his chest tightened. The wind was sharp. Leaves scratched across the ground. The house looked even worse than he remembered, boards rotting, porch light swinging in the breeze, door slightly ajar. He stepped out of the cruiser and felt the cold air press against his skin. Everything was still. Too still. He walked up the steps. They creaked under his boots. "Hello," he called out. "Willow Creek Police Department. Got a noise complaint." No answer. Just the faint sound of something humming. It came from inside. He pushed the door slowly. It creaked open. The smell hit him: old wood, dampness, and something metallic. Blood? No. Just rust. Probably. Inside, the house was dark. Moonlight slipped in through broken windows. Dust floated in the air. Ryan clicked on his flashlight. The humming grew louder. He followed the sound past the hallway and into what used to be the living room. And there, sitting on the floor, was an old baby monitor. One of those older models with the red blinking light. It was humming. Not buzzing. Humming. Like a lullaby. Ryan crouched. What the hell? The monitor clicked. A child's voice whispered through it. "Daddy." Ryan froze. His flashlight flickered. "Emma," he whispered without thinking. But Emma was safe at home. Asleep. He had checked the camera before leaving. The voice came again. "Come upstairs." Ryan stood. His breath fogged the air. It had gotten colder. Much colder. He knew this was wrong. He should report it, wait for backup. But something inside pushed him forward. The stairs groaned under his weight. The walls were lined with old, peeling wallpaper. At the top, a long hallway stretched out, with doors on both sides. The last door on the left was cracked open. A soft light flickered from inside. "Hello?" Ryan said again. No reply. Just silence now. He pushed the door open gently. Inside was a child's bedroom. Dusty toys scattered on the floor. An old crib in the corner. The light came from a small lamp on the nightstand. The bulb blinked faintly, almost dying. Then he saw it. Words written on the wall in red crayon. "He watches from the dark." Ryan stepped back. His flashlight flickered again. When the light returned, the writing was gone. Just faded wallpaper. Suddenly, the closet door creaked. Slowly, it opened an inch. Ryan raised his light. Nothing. He walked over, heart pounding now, and pulled the closet door wide open. It was empty. But on the floor, a stuffed rabbit. Exactly like the one Emma had. Exactly. Ryan grabbed it, confused, shaken. That's when the bedroom door slammed shut behind him. He spun around, yanked the handle. It was locked. The monitor in his hand buzzed back to life. "Why did you leave me, Daddy?" the voice whispered again. It wasn't Emma's voice anymore. It was deeper. Sadder. Ryan dropped the monitor and slammed his fist into the door. It flung open. The hallway was dark again. Silent. But now, on the walls, new writing glowed faintly, scratched into the paint. "He's here." Ryan ran down the stairs, heart in his throat. Outside, the wind had stopped. Everything had stopped. Like the town was holding its breath. He got in his cruiser and drove straight home. Emma was safe. Sleeping in her bed. Her stuffed bunny clutched in her arms. He sat on the edge of her bed and didn't move for hours. Just stared. The rabbit he found, it was still in his coat pocket. So whose was it? The next day, he went back. The Lambert house was locked. Windows boarded. Like no one had been there in years. And the baby monitor? Gone. He never told anyone what really happened that night. Just said it was a false alarm. But sometimes, when the nights get too quiet, he hears that humming again. And once, just once, he swore he heard Emma whisper in her sleep, "Don't go back there, Daddy." I grew up in a small town called Millfield, tucked between hills and thick pine woods. It's one of those places where everyone knows your name, and the biggest news is when the diner gets a new pie flavor. After high school, I stayed. Got a job as a night officer. It was quiet most of the time. Petty thefts. Lost dogs. The occasional drunk sleeping behind the gas station. Nothing serious. But last fall, something strange happened. It was the start of October. The nights were getting colder. The wind would whistle through the dry trees, and the leaves scraped the sidewalks like whispers. Around 11 p.m., I got a call from dispatch. A woman named Mrs. Ellerby, who lived on the edge of town, near the old abandoned dairy farm, said she saw someone near her barn. "I think he's watching me," she told the dispatcher. "He's just standing there." I drove out. The roads were empty, and my headlights cut through the fog like thin blades. I passed that old dairy farm many times growing up. The main barn had collapsed years ago, and the other buildings were left to rot. When I pulled into her driveway, she met me at the door. Her hands were shaking. She was maybe in her 60s. Lived alone since her husband passed. "He was just there," she said, pointing toward the barn out back. "Right near the tree line." I went to look. The grass was tall. Dry. The moon gave just enough light to see the outline of the old barn. I didn't see anyone, but I felt something. Like I was being watched. I did a sweep around the property. Nothing. Told her it was probably a kid messing around or a neighbor passing through. She didn't argue. But I could tell she didn't believe it. The next night, she called again. This time, she said the man was closer. She saw him by the old fence. He didn't move. Just stood there. I went back. Again, I found nothing. But I couldn't shake that feeling. That same night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about her barn. About that field. I even dreamed of it, standing at the edge of it, staring into the dark. Then, the next evening, I went back on my own. No call. Just a feeling I had. I parked near the barn and walked into the field. The air was cold, and I could hear the wooden slats of the old barn creak with the wind. There was a smell of damp earth and old hay. I stood there, waiting. Listening. Then I saw him. A figure. Tall. Thin. Standing just beyond the barn, right at the edge where the woods began. He wasn't moving. I called out, hand on my flashlight. "Hey! You okay?" No answer. I stepped closer. Still no movement. My boots crunched over dry leaves. When I raised my flashlight again, he was gone. I walked all the way to the trees. Nothing. Not a sound. Just the wind picking up. The next morning, Mrs. Ellerby called the station. She said something was scratched into her back door. Deep grooves. Like someone used a knife or a key. I went over. Sure enough, there were 5 long marks in the wood. Not random. Intentional. She said her motion light went on around 3 a.m., but she was too scared to look outside. After that, I started patrolling the area every night. And I started seeing more signs. Footprints in the mud near the fence. A torn piece of dark fabric stuck on the barbed wire. One night, I parked near the field again,